Hey guys, we are very close to 1000 subscriber, only few subscribe have, so please subscribe. Today we are gonna see what if Naruto was grandson of Akeno movie. Darkness surrounded him, nothing was visible but him, he couldn't see anything besides himself in the vast blackness he was in. You can't trust them, a dark and ominous voice spoke, they're creatures born of sin, they only do what benefits them, the darkness will let you see that, give in to the darkness, let it consume you. He shot straight up in bed panting and sweating. He could feel his heart pounding like it was going to shoot out of his chest. It took him a minute before he relaxed. That dream again, he spoke. Well, no use worrying about it now. He got out of bed and stretched. He scratched his cheek and made his way to his bathroom. He turned on the sink and washed his face in some cold, refreshing water. He dried his face and looked at himself in the mirror. His scraggly blonde hair that went in every direction possible. His deep blue, cerulean eyes that looked joyful but when angered cold stare at your very soul. His eyes landed on his cheeks which had his whiskers. Every time he saw them, they reminded him of that night. He shook his head. Around his neck he wore a necklace with a green gem. He was shirtless and his body was defined as much as a 16-year-old could be. Not a muscle freak but had great definition. The most eye-catching thing were black, leather-like wings coming from his back. That's right, he was a devil. He has been a devil for 7 years now. He was found by one Sears and Rias Gremory from a church orphanage here in Kuo, but that is a story for later. Well, Naruto, he said to himself, here's to another great day. This was Naruto Uzumaki. Little did he know that he wouldn't have any more great days for a while. He walked out his bathroom and started to change to his school uniform. He wore the standard Kuo Academy uniform. He wore his black jacket open over his open button-up shirt. He wore a dark orange shirt underneath it. He had the standard black pants with black shoes with a white trim to top it off. He looked in the mirror and put a comb through his hair. It stayed down for a few seconds before going back to its disheveled appearance. He sighed, giving himself a once-over. He nodded and left his room and made his way downstairs. He lived in a small 2-story house. The first floor was very basic. It had the essentials a house needed. A standard-size living room, a bathroom with a shower, a small room that he used as storage and office, and a kitchen with a dining room next to it. The kitchen was open so you could see in it from the dining room. The second floor only consisted of 2 rooms, each with their own bathroom and closets. A hallway connecting the two to a set of stairs. When Naruto reached the end of the stairs, he made his way towards the kitchen. He walked into the dining room to where he saw someone at the table sitting down already. It was a petite girl of 15 years of age with white hair and hazel eyes. The front of her hair has 2 long bangs going past her shoulders and several loose bangs hanging over her forehead, while the back has a short bob cut. She also wears a black cat-shaped hair clip on both sides of her hair. This girl was Kaneko Taju, Naruto's friend and roommate. Morning, Kaneko-chan. Naruto greeted. Said girl just nodded at him, but he could see a hint of happiness at seeing him in her eyes. Would you like blueberry or chocolate chip pancakes? Her cold and emotionless demeanor changed to an excited one before she steeled herself. Chocolate chip please. While she said that flatly, Naruto knew that she was all giddy inside. She always loved his cooking, but she loved his breakfast meals the most due to most of them being made with sweets added in. He went to the kitchen and started making breakfast and thought about when she moved in. She had moved in about a year ago just before she started high school. They were very close before she moved in. They bonded over their past experiences while they weren't the same. They still found comfort in each other. They were both found by Sears after his orphanage incident and Kaneko's family issue. Kaneko was cold and emotionless to everyone in the beginning, but after constantly being next to each other, Naruto and her started to bond. Kaneko would only show emotion when they were alone and keep her emotionless facade when she was with others. That peeved Rias and made her jealous that Naruto could get Kaneko to smile while she nor anyone else could. Naruto finished his pancakes and served them on a plate. Kaneko's plate was comically stacked with pancakes with extra syrup on them. When he brought her the plate, she was practically drooling at the food. He chuckled at her expression and sat in his seat and ate his breakfast. Half an hour later and they finished and made their way to school. Kuo Academy. Naruto internally sighed as he felt a massive wave of negative intent directed at him. It wasn't anything that could affect him, but the fact that he was the center of it was ridiculous. Every male in Kuo Academy hated him, all because he lived with the school's mascot, Kaneko. How did they find out he lived with Kaneko? Well, that was all thanks to the infamous perverted trio, of course. They were following Kaneko on her way to their home, hoping to peep on her by finding out where she lived. That quickly went out the window when Naruto showed up and beat the living snot out of them and threatened to neuter them if they came near his home again. They quickly got the message but told the school that he lived with Kaneko. He didn't like the fact that they referred to her as a mascot, but Kaneko told him it was fine. While he didn't like it, he let it go. They ignored the glares and quickly made their way to the Occult Research Club. Upon arriving, they made their way inside to the main room where they have all their meetings and relax. Naruto took his seat on the end of the couch with the armrest while Kaneko sat right next to him, practically on his lap. He put his hand on her head and started rubbing it as she started to let out small purrs. They then saw Rias walk out of the shower with her hair still wet as she was drying it with a towel that Akeno gave her. These women were the center of Naruto's attention. Whenever they entered a room, he went mute and admired their beauty. When Sears X and Rias had found him, he was a mess. Only after being resurrected as devil did he start to open up. Akeno was already her queen when they found him. Flashback: it was a few days after the incident at the church. A 10-year-old Naruto was in the police station in Kuo wrapped in a blanket. He had a dull look in his eyes as his cheeks were covered in bandages as he held onto his necklace around his neck. Naruto. He looked up and saw the policewoman who found him and was taking care of him. This was the same woman who had found him when he had lost his parents a few years ago, and now she found him in the same situation once again. Some people would like to talk to you. Can you come with me? She held out her hand for him to grab. He grabbed it and followed her as she led him to a private room. When they entered, she closed the door behind them. Naruto looked around and saw that there was a small table in the middle of the room with two people sitting there. The first was a man who looked to be in his early, maybe mid-20s. He had shoulder-length crimson-red hair and blue-green eyes. The person next to him was a girl. She looked about his age and was almost an exact replica of the man next to her. Even if she was so young, Naruto believed her to be the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. Naruto, these people are here to ask you some questions. The man is Sears X Gremory and the girl next to him is his sister, Rias Gremory. She is your age, so there is no need to feel uncomfortable, the policewoman told Naruto. He looked hesitant but took his seat at the table across from the pair. Why, you are from the church? Naruto asked. Sears X frowned at the way Naruto spoke. It wasn't that he was stuttering, but the way he spoke, he was broken. His voice was hoarse and barely understandable. He also didn't make eye contact with Sears X when he spoke. Sears X had read his file about how his parents and godparents were killed. You could say that, Sears X said. You see, I own a large section of Kuo and I let the priests and nuns build a church, so in a sense, you could say I own it as it was built on my land. Naruto stayed quiet but nodded in understanding. Do you mind me asking some questions? Naruto nodded, albeit a little unsure. What happened? Naruto never looked up. We were just finishing dinner when we heard screaming. He spoke. One of the older nuns came running in and was bleeding. She told us to go to our room. So we all ran to our room, but not all of us made it. The man had stabbed the nun with his sword and started to attack us. Naruto shrunk his chair as he pulled his knees to his chest. There was so much blood, he didn't stop. Yukin Santo. He then grabbed the nun who just got there. She was really young and nice. Naruto cut off Sears X. He grabbed her and started to rip her clothes off. You don't have to saw, he said. He wanted to have fun with her. I couldn't take it anymore. I went to help but grabbed me by the neck. He said he was going to leave me alive to remember how useless I was. Naruto reached to his cheeks and pulled off the bandages. He gave me these. He yelled as he started to go hysterical. What Sears X saw made him flinch while Rias felt like she was going to puke. Naruto had 3 lines on each cheek resembling whiskers. They were still fresh if the blood coming out of them was any indication. The lines were a few inches deep. Naruto started yelling and was being hysterical. The officer was holding him, trying to calm him down. Soon other officers and a few medics came in the room to help with Naruto. One of the medics gave him a shot that knocked him out. The medics took him out the room so he could sleep peacefully in the bed he had here. I am terribly sorry, the policewoman said. Anytime he starts talking about the incident, he has a mental breakdown. No need to apologize, it should be me. I should have known better than asking a child to remember such a traumatizing incident. Sears X responded. I think we should be on our way. They said their goodbyes and Sears X and Rias left the station. Once they were a few blocks away, Rias spoke. Oni-sama. Why did we come see him? Sears X looked at Rias with a small, sad smile. Because the church was attacked by a rogue exorcist. He was the only person to survive the encounter and I wanted to see something for myself. Rias quirked an eyebrow. What did you want to see? She questioned. A few years ago, his parents and godparents were killed by robbers. I say robbers because that is what the police reports said, but what they have wrote was that he saw people with black bird wings. Now, if my hunch is correct, he may be a very important person. After that, Sears X returned a few days later with his wife, Graphia. They told him that they wanted to adopt him. When he heard this, he cried as no one ever wanted to adopt him when he was at the church. This got the emotionless Graphia to shed a few of her own tears that shocked Sears X. He wasn't able to even get her to show emotion while doing business-related matters, and this boy had her shedding tears within minutes of knowing her. After the papers were filled out, they then told him the truth. While they did still want to adopt him, they explained to him about all of the beings and creatures that existed, from devils to angels and everything in between. They expected him to go into shock or deny it, but he just said that he kinda knew. He knew when he saw his parents killed that the fallen were real. And so life went on for Naruto. He was turned into a devil by Rias. She had tried to resurrect him using multiple pieces, from her pawns to her bishops and knights, but nothing worked. Sears X knew this wasn't going to work but never said anything to her. He then gave her one of his peerage pieces. It was a mutated piece but it was unrecognizable, while only him and a few others knew how powerful the piece was. When Rias asked what piece it was, he said he didn't know himself. Thus Naruto became the unknown of Rias Gramarie's peerage. It would be a little later when Kaneko would become her rook and Kiba her knight, then Gasper becoming her mutated bishop. Things were difficult for Naruto to adjust. While he accepted that he was now a devil, he still had problems opening up to others besides Grafia and Milikas. Rias and Akeno tried hard to break down his walls and finally succeeded. That was when Naruto started to fall for the two beauties. He would do anything for them. Then came training. When determining what weapon Naruto should have, he felt a pull towards the swords laid out to him. As soon as he picked it up, it felt right. When he moved with it and swung it around, it looked like a second nature for him, even more so than Kiba looked when he wielded his swords. This led to Rias and the rest of her believing his mutated piece was a knight piece. They then believed it was the strongest mutated knight, as he was even able to use the swords from Kiba's Swordbirth sacred gear even better than Kiba was able. But he then showed superb strength like Rook and was able to heal faster than normal, which was like a bishop. It puzzled them but just let it go as a means of his hard work and above average magic levels that he got when he was reincarnated. Flashback end that led to now, not too long after they moved to the human realm and became students at Kuo Academy along with Rias' best friend, Sona Citri. Naruto was taken out of his thoughts as Kiba walked through the door and Rias sat at her desk with Akeno standing behind her. "Good, you are all here now," Rias said. "I need you, Naruto, to bring Issei here after school today." After the event with Rainier, he was attacked by another fallen last night. "I told him that one of you would fetch him for me today when he woke up." "You didn't us. The naked method." Rias interrupted him. She laughed a bit. "No, I healed him by regular means. I just fell asleep at his place when I was done." Naruto nodded, glad that she didn't show her body to that pervert. "I'll bring the pervert after school, Rias-chan," Naruto responded before they all left to start the school day. After school, Issei was nervous. When he woke up this morning, he never expected to wake up with Rias in his room. He felt like jumping for joy, but that went away as Rias said she would have someone get him after school. That immediately made him panic. Did he force her to do something against her will? Did he rape her? Did he do so horrible in bed that she wanted him dead? "Yo pervert!" Issei froze at that voice. He turned his head towards the doorway and saw all the girls crowding around Naruto. Naruto was one of the two great princes of Kuo, as the girls called him. The other was Kiba. While he didn't like them, he would have rather it been Kiba. Kiba was all around nice guy. No matter how many times Issei and his two friends badmouthed Kiba, he only smiled at them. Naruto was a different story. Naruto was a pretty relaxed person until it came to bullying and perverts. While he never cared if they made fun of him, once someone made fun of his friends or someone defenseless, you signed your death warrant. When it came to peeping, well, Issei couldn't count with both hands and feet at how many times Naruto pummeled him and his friends for peeping. But hey, peeping was his way of life, and me? Issei stuttered. Naruto sighed and walked over to him. "Yes, I mean you. Rias already told you she would have someone pick you up, and you know the only time I can be near you is when I have to teach you a lesson," Naruto replied as he started to walk away. Issei nodded and got up, following Naruto out the class. They walked to the Orc Club room in complete and utter silence. Issei wanted to say something, but the thought of getting hit by Naruto was keeping his lips closed. They finally reached the club room and saw that everyone was already waiting for them. Naruto took his seat on the couch and Kaneko sat by his side. "Welcome, Issei," Rias spoke. Issei shifted nervously. What did you need to see me for?" Rias just smiled softly. "I am going to blunt with you, Issei. We are all devils." Everyone a part of the club sprouted black devil wings at her words. She then went on to explain about the supernatural, devils, angels, fallen, the millions of other races. Issei just nodded dumbly at her explanation, not understanding anything she said as he was busy fantasizing about her. "So now that you're a devil, you must go out and make contracts with people. Can you do that?" Rias finished. He nodded with a stupid grin. "You got it. I'll do anything for you, bucko," Rias giggled. "You're cute. You can start by accepting these," Rias said, handing him a stack of papers as he walked out the club. That struck a chord with Naruto. She called Issei cute. Did she like him? Did she not like him? Naruto shook his head. He wouldn't have to worry about Rias falling for Issei. 1 week later, this past week had been shattering for Naruto. He had been called out more by his contracts, which was good for him as he could buy more sweets for Kaneko, and having a little extra cash doesn't hurt either. That wasn't the problem. The problem was Issei. He had no adaptation for magic whatsoever. He couldn't even use the teleportation spell. Devils at the age of 8 are advanced in using that spell. Add to the fact that he had over a handful of contract calls, he didn't get a single one for himself. It also didn't help that he had to ride a bike to the client's home every night. Rias made it her duty to personally teach him how to use magic to some degree and how to get clients. Naruto was a bit peeved that Issei had to be taught how to interact with normal people and not perverts. She even went as far to staying the night at his home some nights, which hit Naruto hard. Naruto felt like his heart was going to break when he learned about this. He even tried to hang out with Rias like they used to. She turned him down every time, saying Issei needed to be taught something else to help him. The same thing happened with Akeno and Kiba. They seemed more interested in teaching Issei than anything else. Naruto had tried talking to them or hanging out with them but got turned down for Issei. Kiba said that he needed to train Issei to make sure that he could protect himself. Akeno told him that she needed to educate him about devils and the other factions. Naruto never felt so hurt before. Rias, Akeno, the girls that he loved and would give his life for, Kiba. He was like a brother to Naruto. Naruto helped him loosen up his revenge attitude in return for remembering those who passed with the project Kiba was subjected to. The only person who stayed by Naruto's side was Kaneko. She hated perverts with a passion, so it was understandable. And then there was that nun that Issei befriended. She was staying in that church. Naruto shook his head of his thoughts as he came to the orc room. Upon entering the room, he saw that it was completely empty. He looked around and couldn't find a trace of them being there. Naruto was a bit perplexed as he just went out with a client just an hour ago and everyone was still here when he left. Letting curiosity get the better of him, he conjured a spell that let peerage members sense each other. When he did it, he froze. He felt Rias and Akeno were fine along with the stupid pervert. No, what froze him was that while he could still sense Kiba and Kaneko, they had very little magic left in them, and they were at the church. He wasted no time in teleporting to the church. Abandoned church. When Naruto arrived, he flinched. As he looked at the church, memories started to fill his head. All those kids killed, the nuns murdered. This was the church that Naruto stayed at when he lost his parents. Naruto steeled his nerves and kicked open the church doors. What he saw, he would never forget. Dead exorcists littered the floor, lying in pools of blood. A blonde girl who he assumed was Asia. Issei had his sacred gear unlocked as he was frozen looking at Rainier, who was currently in her uniform. Kiba and Kaneko were unconscious on the floor. And standing over them was someone who made Naruto's blood boil. Everyone awake looked over at him. Well, if it is Whiskers-kun. Flashback. Naruto had no idea what was going on. The nun had just came in yelling at them to get to their rooms before she was stabbed through her chest. Everyone started screaming and running away. Apparently it was useless as the man was slaughtering them as they attempted to get away. Naruto fell to the ground as he felt the lifeless body of one of the children land on him. The attacker didn't notice him as he went on to continue his massacre. Naruto laid there with the lifeless bodies of his fellow orphans. Now while they may have ignored and bullied Naruto as they were afraid that he was the one who killed his parents, Naruto would never dream of hurting them. No one deserved this. Then he heard a scream. It sounded like one of the new nuns that had just arrived there. Naruto got to his feet and made his way to where he heard the scream. He found himself going to the main hall of the church. When he made it there, he saw the exorcist holding the nun against the wall as her outfit was cut down the middle, exposing her. The man laughed like a lunatic. Now, be a good girl and scream for me. I'll make sure I take your purity from you. Naruto looked on as the nun had a frightful look in her eyes. She looked as if she would rather die than be violated than this man. Naruto snapped. He didn't know why, but all he saw was darkness surrounding him, and standing in the darkness was the exorcist. Naruto charged at him. He didn't get far as the exorcist let go of the nun and grabbed Naruto by his neck. What can a shitty kid like you do against me? The exorcist said while choking Naruto. Stop, the nun yelled. I'll do anything you want. Just don't hurt him. Freed stopped and turned to her. Really? No matter how much she wanted to resist, she nodded. She had to do this so Naruto could live. She had only been here for a year, but she grew closer to Naruto than any of the other children at the orphanage. She saw how the other kids treated him and avoided him. Over the year she was here, they grew close, him telling her about his life that he never told anyone else, and she told him her life. Even about the child she had in secret but had to leave when the Vatican found out. She still loved her child and loved Naruto like her own as well. Maybe in another world they could have been brother and sister. She just hoped that Naruto would meet her one day. Yes, just leave him alone. Her green eyes pleading for him to leave Naruto alone. Her blonde hair disheveled from his previous action. He just gave her a crazy smile. That's disappointing. Naruto's eyes widened as the exorcist stabbed her through her heart with his sword. I hate it when they give in. I love the strugglers. He spoke. He then turned to Naruto, who he still had by the neck. Now to deal with you. Naruto stopped struggling, waiting for his life to end. Don't worry, I won't kill you. He stabbed his sword in the ground and pulled out knife with a 6-inch blade.
I'll just give you something to remind you how shitty you are. He put the blade to Naruto's face. You know, if you had whiskers, you would look like a shitty little fox.
Ah! Naruto screamed. The exorcist had put the blade in Naruto's cheek and started to make a line. That's it. Scream, you little fox. Don't you ever forget who did this to you. The next 10 minutes were filled with Naruto's screams as the exorcist cut 6 lines on his cheek, 3 on each. Now don't forget my name, he said before he left the semi-conscious Naruto in the church. It's flashback end. Freed. Naruto growled. Would you look at that? The shitty little fox is all grown up. Freed yelled. And what's this? You're now shitty devil too. I just love today. First I beat your friends here. He gestured to the unconscious Kiba and Kaneko. Now I get to deal with you. Naruto couldn't control his anger. He clenched his fists and gritted. His man who gave him his whiskers, a never-ending reminder of that night, was here and hurt his friends. He couldn't take it anymore. His control slipped as he yelled at the top of his lungs. He never noticed the black lines that formed on his right arm. He summoned his ice and steel sword that Graphia got him. He moved at speeds that neither Rainier or Freed expected.
Naruto rushed past Issei and Rainier, slashing Rainier from her shoulder to hip as he passed them.
Freed barely had enough time to shield Naruto's sword with his own as the ground developed spider cracks from the force of Naruto's strike. They jumped back from each other to gain some distance. Freed had a maniacal grin on his face. Seemed like Naruto was going to be a good fight for him. Naruto, meanwhile, was starting to lose himself in anger, the black markings on his right arm starting to reach his body. They became visible on the parts where his neck was revealed from his shirt. Seems you are not so useless anymore, Fox-kun. Freed antagonized. Naruto only growled as he raised his sword and charged Freed. Freed only smiled as he pulled out his holy pistol and fired all the shots at Naruto. The first shot was blocked by Naruto's sword that caused the sword to shatter. The second and third shots missed. The fifth and sixth, however, hit him in his right shoulder and arm. However, he kept charging Freed as if the holy bullets had no effect on him. Freed panicked and tried to fire more shots, but Naruto was already on him.
Naruto grabbed his arm that held the gun with his marked arm and twisted it. A loud snap was heard as Freed screamed from Naruto breaking his arm. Freed pulled away and saw he had a black mark where Naruto was holding. Naruto then kicked Freed in the ribs and a crunching sound was made. Before Freed could realize what was happening, Naruto sent him flying away with a jaw-shattering punch. Naruto was going to pounce on Freed, but a light spear struck his foot, keeping him in place. Naruto turned to look at who did this and saw Rainier flying while trying to cover up the bleeding gash he gave her. Naruto turned to look at Freed but saw he disappeared. Naruto let out a roar that shook the foundation, making Rainier lose focus on the spear that held Naruto still. Before she could blink, Rainier found herself falling to the floor from a kick courtesy of Naruto. When Naruto landed, he landed near an unconscious Kaneko. When he saw her, his mind cleared up and his black markings started to recede until it was like they were never there. Naruto walked to where his sword was broken and saw about half of the blade was still intact. Enough to end one fallen angel. Rainier had just sat up and was holding her head, reeling in what just happened. She saw Naruto walking towards her with part of his sword and fear filled her core. She looked around and saw Issei standing there shocked at the events that transpired. Issei. She called out in her Yuma form. Don't let him hurt me. I love you. Don't you love me? Issei shook his head and saw the girl that he had his first date with. Naruto, wait. Issei yelled. Naruto paused a few feet from Rainier and turned to look at him. Can't you see she's just messing with you? You're nothing but a perverted Fuga. Naruto was sent flying past Issei as Rainier recovered enough to hit Naruto with a light spear. Naruto coughed up blood and started to lose consciousness. Things started to become blurry. The last thing he saw clearly was Rainier trying to stab Issei and Issei flinching in fear before seeing a familiar black and red beam consume Rainier. A week later, it had been a week after these events and we had a hurting Naruto. The day after the church incident, Naruto awoke in his own bed with Kaneko beside him. It wasn't as strange as they slept in the same bed when Kaneko cried in the past over her sister. When she woke up, she filled him in on what happened. Kaneko had woke up after Rias killed Rainier with the power of destruction. She then told him that Rias revived Asia as her bishop and she had a sacred gear called Twilight Healing. Naruto then became furious when she told him that Issei took all the credit in killing Freed and wounding Rainier. Naruto wasted no time in getting dressed and going straight to the orc room to explain what really happened. He saw everyone was there and started to tell what happened, including Freed getting away, but they didn't believe him. Issei gloated that it was because of his sacred gear, which they learned was boosted gear, that he killed Freed and injured Rainier.
Naruto persisted on what Issei was saying was a lie but gave up when Akeno, Rias, and Kiba were more interested in his gear. The rest of the week just got worse. Rias paid little attention to anyone besides Issei and Asia, the same with Kiba and Akeno. Naruto felt unwanted and Kaneko tried her best to cheer him up as seeing him upset made her heart ache. She went as far as to show emotion around others, not that they noticed as they were busy with Asia and Issei. Issei let all the attention go to his head. He walked like he was hot shit and went as far as taking Naruto's spot on the couch. When he tried to get it back, he was told by Rias to leave him alone, to which Naruto relented. Asia on the other hand, was kind and endearing to Naruto. Not many paid mind to it besides Naruto and Kaneko. Naruto for the life of him could not be angry with Asia. He didn't know why, but it felt like he felt familiar with her. Her blonde hair and green eyes did look familiar, but he marked that off as that wasn't uncommon among immigrants. The thing that gave him that familiar feeling was her accent. He swore he heard it somewhere. He didn't talk to her much, but that feeling was still there over the week. That was what led him to now. He had just came in from a client. Some strange guy wanted him to fish with him. Oddly enough, wasn't the weirdest thing someone called him in for. He walked into the orc room and went to grab his bag that he left here. When he was about to leave, he heard a vibration sound. He looked at the couch and saw it was a phone. Issei's phone. As much as he wanted to destroy the thing and walk away, he couldn't. Issei needed his phone as his low magic reserves took away from contacting him through the use of magic. So he went to the small pantry they had and grabbed a ziploc and put the phone in it. Issei's house. Naruto arrived at Issei's house and inspected it. It was a nice quiet home that fit well for a loving family. Naruto only hoped Issei's parents were sane and not like Issei. Before he could do anything, he sensed a small amount of magic being used in the house. Before he could sense who it was, a barrier went up. Naruto really wanted to let Issei be, but he relented. He rushed in the home and made his way upstairs. He looked at all the rooms and saw the one that had the barrier. He ran up to it and kicked the door open. He instantly regretted it. "Take me, Issei." Naruto froze and then dropped the phone with a thud. Rias and Issei looked at Naruto. Issei was laying on his back propped up with his elbows without a shirt. Rias was straddling him with nothing on except for panties, leaving her breasts visible. Naruto ran. He ran faster than he ever did. If he had stayed longer, he would have seen Grafia appear just moments after he ran off. Forest. Naruto was crying his eyes out. The girl he loved went after someone else. He had always thought she loved him too. All the time they spent together, the memories they had. Gone. All because of him. Issei showed up and things changed. No one even acknowledged his existence besides Kaneko now. All because he had a powerful sacred gear. Naruto started to become lost. Every negative feeling or emotion filling him. Anger, jealousy, greed, the list goes on. His arm started to get black markings once again. He started to see Issei appear in a tree's place and he lost it. A black gauntlet took place on his hand as punched the tree. It shattered into splinters. Naruto panted as he looked at the tree. He then looked at the gauntlet that was on his arm. He passed out. Mindscape. Naruto looked around and saw nothing but darkness, just like those dreams were. "Welcome, young one." A booming and ominous voice spoke. "Congratulations on being my first wielder, partner." Naruto turned around and saw a shadowy figure approach him. "Now let's get acquainted, shall we?" Orc things were getting far too hectic. Grafia had showed up to get Rias to attend the scheduled meeting with Riser, but she ran off. Thankfully she stopped Rias from giving away her virginity. If Naruto found out, he would be crushed. She needed to tell him so he wouldn't go nuts or do something crazy. And that led. Rias and Riser were arguing over the marriage. Grafia suggested a rating game, to which they both agreed. "Riser will give you 10 days to train and prepare for the match," a cocky Riser said. "Are you trying to say something?" Rias said through clenched teeth. "Well, I do have a full set while you wasted half your pieces on that useless boy over there," Riser responded. "Why you?" Rias shouted. "I challenge you right now." Grafia decided to get involved. Naruto wasn't here and Rias would need all of her pieces to have a chance. "Rias-sama, I advise you to I am thinking Grafia. I won't be insulted by some womanizing prick. Take us to the arena now," Grafia conceded. As she was teleporting them out of the room, she saw Naruto walk in just as they disappeared. The look of hurt and betrayal on his face was more than it should have been for leaving him. All Naruto could do was look at Grafia's apologetic face and Kaneko's teary eyes as he caught them mid-teleport. Rias left him, she abandoned him, Naruto was done. That was chapter 1. Hope you guys liked it. So this was a challenge from Dark King Marcel. Before you flame, I know it is similar to Crowfeast's replaced story, but he did give me permission to use some parts that were the same. So, other than this chapter, the rest will play out differently than replaced. For the pairing, it will be a strong Naruto's Kaneko pairing with a small harem. We have some of the girls picked out for the harem. Remember, Naruto clenched his fists in anger. Rias had left him to go fight Riser in the raiding game that he had been preparing for since he learned of the marriage contract. He had been training and getting stronger for this day to save her from the marriage contract that her family put her into. But she went without him. She didn't need him there because she had Issei. I am through with this, Naruto said as he was walking out the room. And what are you going to do? A voice spoke to him. Naruto turned around and looked where the voice was coming from. He saw the owner of the voice sitting on the windowsill. There was a small, orange fox sitting in the window, with red slit eyes and its one tail swishing back and forth. It was a fox spirit and his familiar. I don't know, Kurama. I just can't deal with this anymore. I have done everything for Rias and then Issei shows up and she tosses me aside. Naruto vented. I was always there for her when she needed me. When she wanted to come to the human world and her parents didn't want her to, I stood up for her and gave them my word I would protect her from anything. Naruto's right arm started to develop black markings on it. When she needed a shoulder to cry on, I was there. When she needed help with a problem I was there. Now she goes to that pervert who hasn't done anything. I thought Rias and Akeno loved me as I did them, but I guess it was too good to be true. Naruto's eyes flashed yellow for a second. Kurama just listened to Naruto as he let all his pent-up emotions out while lifting an eyebrow at the changes Naruto's body had. When Naruto finished, he spoke. Are you finished yet? Naruto nodded. Naruto, I understand that you're upset, but what are you going to do about it? Mope and be depressed all the time? Ill-Lee and become a stray? Kurama interrupted him. You'll be hunted down and killed by other devils or maybe even the fallen or exorcist. While I despise devils, humans, and those alike, you, dare I say it, have grown on me. Naruto stayed quiet before speaking. Then you'll get traded and leave this peerage, Naruto said. And how are you going to do that? Rias is the only one with that authority of power as you are in her peerage regardless if you are from Searzek's unknown mutated piece. Plus, she is a full-blooded devil which means greed is stronger in her than you are. She wouldn't trade a mouse piece for any normal piece so you would be stuck here. Naruto remained silent. And if you leave, what about the person who loves you? Kurama asked. Naruto's face turned sour. Did you not hear me? I said Rias obviously do, Naruto said before he was smacked with Kurama's tail. You idiot! Kurama yelled. Not her, I am talking about that little Neko that lives with you. Naruto rubbed his reddening cheek as his adopted a puzzled look. Kaneko. Yes you dolt. Isn't it obvious? She only follows you around like a lost puppy. Kitten. She sleeps in your bed most of the time and only smiles or shows emotion when you are with her. And if you leave, she will be under Riser's watch. Kurama scolded. Naruto was stumped. He knew Kaneko loved him but thought it was like a sibling loves one another. Man, did he feel like shit. Here he was chasing after two girls who ended up chasing after some tasteless womanizer while he was treating Kaneko just as Rias and Akeno were treating him. And she still loved him after all this time, her teary-eyed face coming to his mind from just moments ago when he saw them leave. How could he be such an idiot? The one person that he truly connected with and wasn't afraid to show his true self to, he ignored her. He knew he loved her, he always did, but as family because that was how he thought she loved him. Oh, how wrong could he have been? No more, he whispered. Kurama raised an eyebrow. No more will I ignore Kaneko's feelings. Kurama grinned. Kurama, take me to the raiding game. No doubt they're halfway through it already and I want to save Kaneko from that pig Riser. That was the Naruto that Kurama knew. He smirked. You're lucky, kid. If Inari wasn't a goddess, I wouldn't be able to freely teleport to wherever I wanted, Kurama said as a light started to envelope the both of them.
Thank you, Kurama, I knew I could always count on you, Naruto said. Well, don't expect help in the raiding game. Getting past all the barriers the devils put to keep people from interfering with the games will drain my power significantly, so I won't be able to stay long. Naruto nodded in understanding before the orange light fully enveloped him. Raiding game. Rias regretted anything more than her decision to have her raiding game now.
She was so confident that she could take Riser down with her peerage, especially since Issei had unlocked his sacred gear. The rest of her peerage had been training for the last few years for this moment also.
She would win, wouldn't she? Oh, how wrong she had been. She let her temper get the best of her and challenge Riser to a raiding game without making a plan. Not to say they were being destroyed, just they stood no chance against a man who only lost 2 games by forfeit.
Akeno had eliminated 2 rooks and a bishop on her own. Kiba was able to take out both of Riser's knights and a few pawns while Kaneko took out both rooks and a few of his pawns. Issei was busy gawking at the girls to be of any help while Asia proved most useful as she healed them as much as she could before she got exhausted and eliminated by Riser's queen, Yubaluna. She had taken Asia out when she began healing Akeno. Akeno surprised, and by the time she saw Yubaluna, It was too late. Kiba saw Akeno leave the battlefield and charged her but was intercepted by Riser's remaining pawns. Kiba took out 3 but the remaining 2 took advantage of his exhausted state and eliminated him. Kaneko summoned whatever strength she had left and took out the 2 pawns before getting kicked by Yubaluna and sent tumbling across the front of the school grounds. She was conscious but was unable to move, leaving her in the raiding game. That left Rias and Issei to fight with Kaneko helpless while Riser stood opposite of her with his bishop and sister, Revel, and queen, Yubaluna. Rias couldn't help but feel as if there should have been one more person on the field. It wasn't Gasper as he wasn't ready to come out yet. She didn't have to think for long as Riser interrupted her thoughts. "Well, Rias-chan, what are you going to do now?" Riser taunted. Rias was going to speak but Riser beat her to it. "What happened to that blondie you had? You know, the one who always tried to kill me with that glare of his. Did he finally run away after realizing that he never had a chance of being with you? Did you turn him down so hard that his heart broke?" Riser laughed as did Yubaluna while Revel shook her head sadly. She never liked the way her brother acted. It was just sad watching that boy follow you like a lovesick puppy. Man. Did he ever love you? Riser was holding his sides trying to contain his laughter. Rias finally realized who was missing. Naruto. How could she forget about him? What made her forget? He loved her. Why didn't she know? "We don't need that guy," Issei yelled. "I am more than enough for Bucko to deal with you guys." Issei gloated with a confident smirk as he crossed his arms. His cool demeanor was cut short. Ha ha ha. Riser was in full-blown laughter as Yubaluna was laughing and Revel was giggling. "You wouldn't hold a candle to that blonde," Riser told him. "His piece outmatches yours 100 times over." "Liar," Issei yelled. "I hold 8 pawn pieces and you just said he has 1 piece. He can't be a queen because Akeno has that piece so he has to be weaker than me." Riser just smiled cockily as his laughter started to die down. He loved to show how worthless half-breed devils were. "That is true, but he has a very special piece in him." Issei quirked an eyebrow. "You see, Naruto doesn't have one of Rias-chan's piece in her, but her brother's." Riser face palmed at the confused face Issei was making. "Sigh, Rias' brother is Seer's ex-Lucifer, the strongest devil in the underworld and the underworld's leader," Issei gaped. "Rias was related to the leader of the devils. And by telling by your reaction, you have little understanding of how our evil pieces work. You see, depending on how strong you are, it would take more than 1 piece to revive you." Issei smirked. "It also factors in the strength of the piece's owner. While you may hold 8 pawns, if her brother was to resurrect you, he would have used maybe less than half the number of pawns Rias used." Issei deflated. So he was only as strong as his king, but Rias was strong too. And Rias received a piece from her brother. It also happened to be a mutated piece. You should already know that mutated pieces are stronger than non-mutated pieces. Issei started to look depressed as Riser kept explaining, much to Riser's chagrin. "That is the piece that Naruto holds within him. The problem is, no one knows what piece that is, not even Lucifer-sama himself doesn't know what piece it is. He said that it was an extra piece when he received his evil set." Issei couldn't understand what was going on anymore. Was he truly that worthless? He took 8 pieces but Naruto only needed 1 mutated from the Devil King. How strong was Naruto really? "Enough games, Riser," Rias yelled. "This match ends here with your defeat." Riser smirked. "And how so? All that is left is your rook who is badly injured, a clueless pawn, and yourself. You may pose a threat but the other 2 are better off dead," Riser taunted. Before anyone could do anything else, an orange light appeared in the middle of the 2 groups. Reception hall. The room was filled with noble devils, from the Gremory and Phoenix House, to the Cetri and Bales. Many had came to the reception hall to watch the rating game between the heir of Gremory and the third born of the Phoenix House. "What is that?" yelled Lord Phoenix. No one answered as none had any idea who it was but one person. "Naruto," Graphia whispered. Seer's ex was standing next to her and gave her a sad look. She had told him what her sister was planning to do and was upset. He knew Graphia loved Naruto just as much as she did Milika's, and to see Naruto's source of love about to give away her virginity to a boy she just met, made her heart ache. Seer's ex loved Naruto too. He would always be his son. Rias was his sister, but what she did was not only disappointing, but disgraceful as an heir to the Gremory house. He looked at the screen and hoped that Naruto didn't know what Rias did. Seer's ex didn't want him to release his unknown power sealed within him, and no matter how much it pained him, he prayed Naruto wouldn't lose himself if he releases said power. Rating game. Naruto appeared on the battlefield with Kurama sitting on his shoulder. Naruto looked in front of him and saw Riser with his 2 remaining pieces. He looked behind him and saw Rias and Issei with Kaneko lying behind them. His eyes widened before he ran towards her. Rias went to give him a hug but hugged thin air as Naruto avoided her in favor of going to Kaneko. When he reached her, he knelt down and held her upper body up. "Kaneko-chan, are you alright?" Naruto asked. She gave him a small smile. I am fine, just a little tired, Kaneko lied. She tried to get up but stopped when Naruto brought her into a hug. She was shocked, he had never hugged her out of the blue like that before. I am sorry, he said. She looked puzzled. I am sorry for being so stupid and not realizing your feelings. Kaneko blushed at what he was saying. What was he talking about? They were in the middle of fighting. Kaneko, give up please. I don't want you to get hurt. I will deal with them. Please rest, Naruto told her. She wanted to protest but saw the look on his face and knew there was no arguing. Okay. She conceded. Naruto nodded. Kurama, go with her please. Kurama grumbled something about babysitting but hopped onto Kaneko's shoulders. I give up, Kaneko said before disappearing. Rias Rook has been retired. Greyfire's voice rang out through the battlefield. Well, looks like you didn't abandon the boy Rias? Riser laughed. Rias frowned and Naruto adorned an angry look on his face. Which one of you hurt Kaneko-chan? Naruto growled out. Yubaluna was about to take credit before Riser spoke up. I did. So what are you Goi? Riser never finished as Naruto punched him in the face, sending him flying into the replica of the school building. He turned and quickly punched Yubaluna in the stomach, sending her to the ground. He moved faster than anyone on the field could see, and than most of those watching. The only ones able to track him were the ones who had lots of experience, but even then, he looked as if he moved through the shadows. Rias could only stare wide-eyed as Issei gaped. Naruto turned to Revel. Give up, Revel. I know you don't want to fight, but if you do, I won't hold back. Revel didn't have any time to respond as a giant fireball was coming towards them from the hole in the school. Naruto picked up Revel bridal style and jumped away from the blast that engulfed where they were standing, including Yubaluna. Yubaluna's screams could be heard until she left the raiding game. Riser's queen has been eliminated. Naruto landed a few feet away from Rias and Issei. He placed Revel on her feet as she had a red hue on her cheeks due to embarrassment and anger from being carried and that her brother almost hit her with his attack. Wait here, Ujo-sama, princess, Naruto told her before he jumped back to where they were standing moments ago. Revel fought hard to keep her blush under control. You filthy mutt. Riser screamed as he flew out of the hole in the wall with his phoenix wings. How dare scum like you touch me? Naruto just stared at him coldly, never removing his eyes from his form as if staring at his soul. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue. Riser smirked. He knew what would set him off. I am sure that little Neko would love to have my tongue in her. Riser instantly regretted what he said. All Naruto saw was black. He wanted to kill Riser. He didn't care about Rias and Akeno. All he cared about was Kaneko, and this scumbag just pushed his luck. You bastard! Naruto yelled, black marking covering his arm as his eyes turned solid yellow with a black pupil. The aura he let out felt as if it was draining the life out of those nearby. Black energy started to surround him, tendrils swishing around before he was obstructed by a black cloud of energy. When it cleared, it revealed an astonishing sight. Spectators, what is that? Someone yelled. What is he doing? Another shouted. Chaos erupted as the room was filled with similar statements before the room dropped in temperature significantly. Searsex, Graphius said in a spine-chilling tone. Did you know about this? The moments Graphius said Searsex without any form of honorific, he knew he was boned. Graphia was no fool. The moment the energy started to form around her adopted son, she felt the power of a sacred gear. Now she wanted to know why she wasn't informed. Before any response could be made by Searsex, his father spoke. Look! Zeoticus shouted. The smoke is clearing. Everyone turned to the screen and would never forget what they saw. Raiding game. When the smoke cleared, Naruto stood where he was before, but he looked nothing like the Naruto everyone knew. His eyes remained yellow like they were before. He was covered in black energy, but this time, his right arm was covered with a black piece of armor that went just below his elbow, black etchings coming from it, up his arm and covering parts of his neck and face. His canines were longer and sharper than before. His scars on his cheek were as dark as the markings covering his arm. His entire appearance and aura that he gave off was demonic and dark. All anyone could do was stare at the new Naruto, not believing in his new power and aura. Riser hid his fear and spoke to Naruto. Do you think some costume change is going to help you? It doesn't matter. Rias, Akeno, and Kone. Shut up! Naruto yelled, his voice gaining a deep and frightening tone. You're nothing but a filthy man whore. I don't care if you take Rias and Akeno. You will not go anywhere near Kaneko. The spectators, along with Rias, were shocked. To the spectators, they thought that Naruto loved the two girls and would do whatever he could to protect them, but now he said Riser could have them, making them wonder what happened. Rias, however, was crushed. She never knew how Naruto felt about her and Akeno until a few moments ago, and now he said he didn't care if she was married off to Riser. She never felt so hurt before in her life. I will stop you here, Naruto said before extending his arm. He opened his palm and particles started to appear in his open hand before taking shape. The first thing to materialize was a black handle with a small black chain on it. On the faces of the handle, it had multiple red, diamond-shaped markings running up and down it. Then the rest started to materialize until it revealed a pitch-black blade. There was no color to it other than black and was quite lengthy. Google Tensa Zangetsu. I will cut you down where you stand. Naruto pointed the sword at Riser. Like hell you will. Riser yelled before launching a fireball that was the size of the orc building at Naruto. Naruto just stood there while glaring at Riser before the fireball engulfed him. Ha ha ha. Not so tough now, are ya? Riser laughed. That was one of the strongest fireballs that we Phoenix could make. You had no chance from the start. The onlookers could only watch with terrified looks on their faces. Naruto was obliterated in a matter of seconds. Rias fell to her knees. She just lost one of her best friends, the only person that was always there for her, and she neglected him ever since Issei and Asia joined a little over a month ago. Rias now knew blowing off Naruto wasn't worth it. Hey. Rias looked up when she heard Riser yell, I eliminated the weakling, so announce it already. Riser yelled at the announcer of the rating game. Graphia watched in horror as her her real son, was just erased with an attack that made the House of Phoenix one of the top pillars in the underworld. Just as she was about to announce the elimination and death of her son, someone spoke. Is that all you have? Came a shout from the flames that covered Naruto. Everyone watched in fascination as the flames started to swirl in a tornado-like fashion. The spiral started to get smaller and smaller until it was revealed that the flames were being absorbed into Naruto's sword. You're a pathetic excuse for a phoenix, Naruto said before charging at Riser. Riser snarled and started to throw fireballs at Naruto. Each fireball was blocked by Naruto's sword, which seemed to absorb each and every one of them as none exploded like they should have. Naruto appeared before Riser and slashed him from his left hip to his right shoulder. Riser screamed in pain before he flew away from Naruto. That may have hurt, but it isn't enough to gaw. Riser taunted before spitting out blood. He looked down and saw the slash that Naruto made was still there. He focused all his magic to the cut but nothing happened. What did you do to me? Riser screamed before he fell to the ground on his knees. This is my sacred gear, Naruto said in his normal voice while keeping his new look active. He raised his right arm that had the armor piece while holding the sword in it. Dark Rule. Naruto shouted. Everyone went wide-eyed at that, even Sirzex. They had never heard of this sacred gear before. Was it a new one? Did someone or Azazel finally make an artificial gear already? I am its first wielder. This blade, Naruto pointed the blade at the kneeling Riser, is the counterpart to Excalibur. Jaws hit the floor. That means that this sword is 100% demonic. Meaning it harms holy magic and items, while any demonic attacks, such as devil magic, are negated with it, Naruto explained. And here's the kicker, Naruto said with a full-blown maniacal grin. It stops the flow of devil magic to the inflicted wound area, meaning, your rapid healing will never help you as long as I wield this sword, Naruto yelled. The room with the spectators was completely silent, not even breathing could be heard in the room. Naruto positioned the sharp edge of the sword against Riser's jugular. Now, he started. Do you forfeit? Riser could only quiver in fear. No matter how much he wanted to deny it, he lost. He never felt so scared in his life. I give up, Riser stuttered. It took a few seconds, but the announcement was made. Riser Phoenix has forfeited. The winner is Rias Gremory. Graphia's voice sounded through the game and room with the spectators. Soon after, the devils on the field were teleported to the room with the spectators. Reception Hall. Rias, Issei, Naruto, Riser and Revel were all teleported to the reception hall where all the noble devils were watching. The moment they were visible, an applause broke out to congratulate Rias on her win. She smiled and bowed while Issei had a shit-eating grin. Riser left to the medics to get his injury looked at while Revel was pulled aside by her parents. Naruto could care less as he was looking for Kaneko. He started to walk forward to where he could see most of the members that had less damaging wounds of Rias and Riser's peerage. He saw Kaneko standing next to Asia near Kiba and Akeno. As he made his way over there, Rias stepped in front of him. Oh Naruto, she started. Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means to me. Rias went in to give him a hug but stopped when she felt him grab her shoulders. Listen Rias, don't act all sweet and caring now that I won that rating game for you, Naruto said coldly. You ignored me and left me to my own devices for the last month in favor in training him, Naruto angrily said as he pointed at Issei. Well, you have to understand, Rias pleaded. I needed him to be as strong as he could for this game. Ha! Naruto laughed, surprising those who knew him. He was never one to laugh in someone's face or known to be angry. What good did that do you? Did he eliminate any of Riser's peerage? She shook her head. Then it was all just a waste, he shouted, and don't forget about what I saw you trying to do last night. Rhea's eyes widened as she forgot that he walked in just before Graphia came. Graphia was shocked to her core. He doesn't mean, she thought. No, he couldn't be. I didn't see him there and I stopped her before anything could happen. Out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw Graphia shifting nervously, so, he thought, were they in on it too? Naruto questioned himself before speaking. I am done Rias. That statement put the devils on edge. He wasn't planning on becoming a stray, was he? I loved you for the kind and caring girl that I thought you and Akeno were. I know see that I was just merely a tool to be used, Naruto said. Naruto, that's not true. Rias pleaded as tears started to form. I will stay in your peerage, so you don't have to worry about your weapon leaving you, he said, giving her a bit of hope that was crushed with his next words. Know this, I am not staying for you as I know realize that loving you was a mistake. That hurt. The others in the room flinched at the cold words he spoke. I am only staying so I don't leave someone all alone and because of the promise I made to your brother that I would always be there for you. Just know that I am only doing this as a promise and if I had the choice, I wouldn't. He finished as he walked past her. She tried to grab him but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. She turned to see who it was. Oni, stop. Searsex told her, you've done enough. Let him cool off. She nodded and looked at Naruto walking to her peerage. Akeno saw him walking towards her and sent him a suggestive smile and wink. Akeno thought he was going to her as did Rias. They were proved wrong when he brushed her off as if she wasn't even there. The rest of the devils just watched with anticipation, waiting to see what the blonde enigma would do next. Naruto made his way towards Kaneko. When he reached her, he saw she was wrapped in bandages. Her left arm was covered as half of her right leg was. Her shirt was cut at the bottom, revealing that her stomach was bandaged also. Are you okay, Kaneko? Naruto asked with concern. Hi, she responded with her emotionless tone, but if you looked closely, like Naruto did, you could see that her eyes were watery. I am sorry, he said. I am sorry that I didn't realize your feelings before. Kaneko's cheeks adorned a pink hue on them. I knew you always loved me but I thought you loved me as a brother and nothing more, so I loved you as a sister and nothing more. Tears started to fall down her face. I am glad that you are okay. I love you as you're my family. The truth is, I don't know what is going to happen between us. I mean, if we can be in a relationship, but the thing is, he started. I don't know if I can right away. I am still trying to cope with everything that has happened in these past few weeks. Kaneko looked down as her hair shadowed her eyes. I understand if you don't have feelings for me anymore. I made you wait this long and all I am asking is to wait a bit longer, he said as he looked to the side. Naruto turned to look at Kaneko. When he faced her, she grabbed his shirt and pulled him down to her eye level. He expected her to hit him and he would let her. Kaneko, I am sore MMPH, he started but was cut off as a pair of lips met his. His eyes got as wide as saucers as he looked at Kaneko kissing him. He was shocked to his core. He knew Kaneko showed emotion around him but to openly kiss him in public shocked him. The entire room dropped their jaws. Kaneko kissed Naruto. She was the one to initiate it. Her emotionless reputation was on par with Graphia, so for her to do that just left the room speechless, Graphia included. After what felt like an eternity, which was only 4 seconds, the two separated. Naruto was speechless, still shocked that Kaneko kissed him. Kaneko looked up at him and did something she's never done in public before. She smiled. I waited this long, I can wait a little bit more. Naruto only nodded dumbly. Now, take us home please, she said as she hugged him and nuzzled her head into his chest. And just like that, Naruto teleported them to his nice little home in Kuo. Leaving a whole mess of trouble behind, it took a while for everyone to gain their bearings. After they did, all the nobles started to leave seeing that the entertainment was over. Oh, were they wrong. Once all the nobles were gone, besides the Gremory family, Rias turned to Searsex, her peerage behind her now with Akeno standing by her side. Oni-sama. Naruto can't do that, can he? I never treated him like a tool, I just wanted his. Slap, slap. Rias and Akeno both held a hand to both of their cheeks with shock. Searsex was stunned at what just transpired in front of him. How dare you? Graphia shouted. I don't know what any of what Naruto said was true, but I know that my son doesn't lie. Searsex tried to dissuade the situation before it got out of control. Gray, no. She cut him off. She is not a child anymore, Searsex. She has to deal with the consequences of her actions. Searsex wanted to say something but she continued. Do you not remember what I told you tried to do just before the rating game started? She shouted as Searsex frowned at remembering what his sister was going to do. And what would that be? Questioned a curious Zeoticus and a nodding Venelana. You didn't tell them? Graphia asked her husband. I didn't see any reason to. Searsex tried to defend himself. Graphia sighed before getting under control and adopted her professional stature. I am sorry for my outburst, Lord and Lady Gremory, she bowed, but simply waved it off as everyone had an outburst here and there. That is fine, Graphia, Venelana told her, but what did my daughter do? She said as she looked at Rias, who shrank under her gaze. When I went to go get Rias for her meeting with Riser, Graphia explained, I found her in just her underwear in her newly acquired pawn's room. Rias looked down as her parents looked at her with disappointing gazes. She was planning on giving her virginity to her pawn in hopes of breaking the contract between her and Riser, Graphia told them. Rias couldn't feel more ashamed of herself as her parents frowned at what Graphia told them. And if I am correct, from what Naruto said earlier, he witnessed the whole ordeal just before I did, Graphia said, remembering to go and talk to Naruto right after this. Zeoticus and Venelana were shocked. If Naruto saw, that must have crushed him. Even they knew how much he loved their daughter and Akeno. After a few moments and seeing Graphia get a bit fidgety, Zeoticus finally spoke. Thank you, Graphia. I know what you want to go do and I give you full permission to go and see him. Graphia nodded before teleporting to go see her son. Now, he spoke, turning to the remaining people in the room, for you two, or should I say three, Zeoticus said, looking at Rias, Akeno, and Circex. Is what Graphia said true? Nobody looked him in the eye, choosing to take interest in the floor. I see. Well, there are going to be consequences being dealt with here today, he started. However, Circex looked at his father, no matter how much I want to, I can't punish you as you are no longer a Gremory by name, so, you may leave. I advise you, however, to leave Graphia alone with Naruto as he seems extremely vulnerable right now. Circex nodded and left to his home to look after Milikas.
Now for you, Rias. Rias didn't say anything. I am very disappointed in you. Why would you go and do such a thing?
I wanted to get out of the marriage contract. I didn't want to be a part of Riser's harem. Zeoticus only shook his head. You always did have a bad temper. Rias wanted to shout, but he continued. You never read the contract fully as you were upset about being married away to Riser, he finished. Venelana continued for her husband. Yes, we understand why you didn't want to be married to Riser as we do not like the way he is either, she said, but he was being married to you. Rias looked confused at that, meaning he would have no power over you. You are the heir to our house and the Phoenix already have an heir. Riser was just a means to bring the houses together, Zeoticus nodded. While the elders would have liked it, they could never force you two to have children. You could have stayed married and never had any or found another man to have a child with, as very uncommon and rare as they are. Female devils do have harems also, though those are mostly comprised of women also, Zeoticus said as he shot his wife a look as she just smiled slyly. Rias was shocked. She never knew that was what the contract said. She felt terrible. She had just lost one of her best friends all because she had a quick temper. Now for your punishment, Zeoticus would have continued if a certain pawn didn't interrupt him. Rias Bucko didn't do anything wrong. She was just helping me train. She didn't want to be. Zeoticus was going to yell at him, but his wife spoke for him. And who are you to talk? Venelana said in a cold voice. If I recall, at some point during the game you shouted that you would do anything to touch my daughter's breasts and proclaimed you wanted to be harem king. So how are you any different than Riser? Venelana scolded him. Issei didn't say anything as Zeoticus spoke. Enough of this. You, boy, should learn when to speak. If this was an important meeting, you could have had everyone in your peerage killed, including my daughter. Issei flinched. Rias, just by the way your new pawn shows your status as a king. While I am not allowed to take away your peerage, I can restrict you from doing things with them. Zeoticus told her as she looked down and shamed at being called a bad king. First, you will not handle any political matters that occur within Kuo. You and Sona were given that area to share with you handling affairs because of your brother. Now Sona will handle the affairs in and around Kuo, he said. Second, someone will be coming by every now and then to check up on you. I don't know who yet, but expect them to show up. And finally, you cannot force Naruto to do anything he doesn't want to that doesn't involve peerage duties. He already said he will fulfill his promise he made to us, so that will be all he has to do. Rias wanted to argue, but he held up a hand. It is not entirely all my decision. After his display in defeating Riser with little effort, the higher-ups that were here started to talk. Him defeating a high-class devil, especially a Phoenix while negating his regenerating factor, is definitely worthy of having a chance of getting his own peerage. This time her whole peerage was shocked. Naruto could get his own peerage? That is all. Now go back and give Naruto his space. Also, expect a party for your victory. While I am now against it, the nobles feel you deserve for beating Riser. With that, Rias and her peerage left with tears falling from her eyes. Naruto's home. When Naruto teleported Kaneko and himself back home, he carried Kaneko to her room so she could rest. He then went to his room to shower and hopefully get some rest. Unfortunately, rest had to come later as when he exited his bathroom to his room, Graphia teleported in. Naruto, are you okay? Graphia asked with concern in her voice. What does it matter to you? He shot back. Graphia was stumped. Why was he angry with her? What did she do? What are you talking about, Naruto? What's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? My entire life is what's the matter? Naruto started shouting, much to the shock of Graphia. Naruto wasn't one to show much anger, let alone shout. What scared Graphia was that he was shouting at her. Naruto never got angry or upset at Graphia, so this was all new to her. Was I just some sort of tool for you guys? Was you adopting me just so Rias could have a sacred gear at her disposal until a better one came along? He yelled, his eyes turning yellow briefly. Naruto, and you weren't planning on telling me that Rias was going to give away her virginity to that pervert, were you? He yelled as she flinched. Were you going to hope that I never found out? Tears started to form until they cascaded down his face as he turned his back to her. Ever since my family was killed, I thought no one would ever love me again. The pain of being shunned and bullied at the orphanage hurt. Watching all the adults walk in and walk right past you as they believed I had something to do with my parents' death. Graphia stayed silent, holding in her tears. She never knew how he truly felt about all that. She had a feeling, but never really knew. They looked at me with disgust and fear of what they heard. There was only one person who showed me love and recognition. He smiled sadly as he remembered the nun who he shared his most inner feelings with. Then, Freed came and took her away from me, giving me these. He touched his scars on his face, a never-ending reminder of how I couldn't save her. He took a deep breath. And then you guys showed up, when you said you wanted to adopt me. I was never so happy since I lost my parents. I cried tears of joy that night at finally having a family again. When you told me about the world of supernatural, I was stunned. But I believed it as I knew I saw a man with black wings kill my parents and grandparents that night. And when you guys gave me the option to become a devil and be stronger than I was before, that was when I made the promise, that I would always be by Ria's side and protect her no matter what. Graphia let her tears fall as she remembered that day. He was so young and hadn't even been with them for a full day yet and made a promise of a lifetime. And now, I can't help but feel everything has been a lie. All you did was pretend to show me love just for your own personal gain. He turned to yell at her. He looked at the ground as the tears fell. It hurts to know people you put your trust into were just using you. Graphia couldn't take no more as she ran to him and wrapped him up in hug. He struggled to get free, but Graphia's superior strength held him to her chest as he finally gave up. She felt her shirt get drenched in his tears and he let loose everything he was holding, but she didn't care. She would be there for him now and forever. She shushed him and ran her hand through his hair as she sat on his bed, bringing him with her. Naruto sat up and looked at her. Listen, I didn't know you had a sacred gear sealed in you, and that is not the reason why we adopted you. I only just found out about it, and Sirzex said he felt it within you when he met you but couldn't tell which one it was, Graphia told him. But we didn't care about that. We adopted you because we became attached to you, Sirzex, when he questioned you and I, from what he told me about you. All the hardships you had to go through so early in your life. I couldn't leave you alone after all that. Naruto looked in her eyes for any lies and found none. At first I wasn't sure how to act. We just had Milikas and I had no idea what a boy your age would need. I was scared, just as scared when Milikas was bored. I was afraid you weren't going to like me as your mother and think of me as someone trying to impersonate your mother, Graphia said as tears formed. Then you started to open up a little more, talking more with the others and not staying by yourself all the time. Even if you never called me your mother, you would always come to me for problems that only mother could help with. When you got injured or needed help with anything, you always came to me. It filled my heart with joy that you needed me. Naruto could only smile at the memories he had when she was always there. I always thought of you as my son, not my adopted son but my real son. She stroked his cheek. Naruto felt tears fall down his face as she said that. He never knew that was how she felt. But I didn't know how you would take it. I know you loved your real parents and wanted to keep Uzumaki as your mother gave you that name, and didn't know if you wanted to be called a Gremory, Graphia said as she smiled sadly at him. Naruto hugged her as he mumbled something under his breath. What did you say, Naruto? Graphia asked. I said I would love to be your son and have your name, Ka-chan, Naruto said. Graphia never felt so happy in her life before. He had called her his mother for the first time since they adopted him. She cried and hugged him back. They stayed like that until Naruto spoke again. Plus, I think Naruto Uzumaki Lucifuge has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Graphia froze and pulled back from the hug. Naruto duh. I know, he cut her off. I am your son and both of my mothers lost their families. I was named Uzumaki to keep her family name alive, and I want to keep yours alive too, he said as he smiled at her. Please don't fight me on this, I want this. She nodded and hugged Naruto while saying I love you and him the same. Naruto eventually fell asleep with his head in her lap as Graphia ran her fingers through his hair. The events today finally catching up to her as she felt her eyelids getting heavy. she laid Naruto down on his bed and kisses his cheek before muttering goodnight. She went to teleport home but not before she heard Naruto mumble something that made her heart warm up. "I love you, Ka-chan." She went to bed that night with a smile on her face. 1 week later, it had been a long week and a lot happened during the week. First was Naruto not going to school for the whole week. He didn't want to see anyone from his peerage besides Kaneko. This irritated Rias as she wanted to talk to him. The same could be said for Akeno. She went to go talk to her childhood friend, Sona Citri. That didn't go as well as she hoped as she walked in on Sona and her sister Serafal talking. Rias went to leave but Serafal stopped her. Serafal then went to explain the situation with Naruto to her. Serafal said she was the one her father had to come check on her and by extension of her own parents, Sona. She said that Naruto was given permission to miss school by Zeoticus so there was nothing she could do about it. Rias left frustrated. She was hoping to get to talk to Naruto but that would have to wait until the party at the end of the week. She then went to talk to Kaneko and get things straightened out but she was even more emotionless and quiet than before. She was worse than when she first joined her peerage and Rias wanted to rip her hair out. Then came Issei and his problems, or the problems he was causing. He was still taking peeping to a whole new level where he and his friends hid in a locker in the girls' locker room. This led to Kaneko beating the living snot out of them. Their perverted abilities couldn't heal the broken bones they received from their beating. Issei was fine due to him being a devil but his friends were out for the month due to the injuries Kaneko caused. But not having his friends didn't stop Issei from peeping. This led to him getting beat by the Kendo Club, again. Then came Asia. No matter how caring and loving Asia was, she didn't want to live with Issei anymore. She was grateful that Issei was her first friend and saved her, but she couldn't be around his perverted tendencies anymore. She had walked in on him while he was taking care of himself multiple times. Rias compromised and had her stay with Akeno much to Issei's displeasure. He didn't voice it as it would probably cause more problems for Rias than she already had. During all of this, Naruto was out all week. He was looking for a job to provide for him and Kaneko. He knew him not going to school would put him behind in his contracts so he had to find a new source of income. He had found a nice little ramen stand to work at, but that is for another time. And Kaneko, she was actually quite happy with her life at the moment despite the issues that happened. Naruto had finally saw the feelings she had for him and although he didn't feel the same as much as she did, he said he would try as long as she waited for him to sort out all his issues. And wait she would do, although a bit hard, she would do it for him, though she did sleep in his room more often than she regularly did. And much to her enjoyment, Naruto started to be a bit more physical with her, from hugs to head petting which she enjoyed very much. And that was how the week went ever since Naruto defeated Riser. Present Naruto sighed as looked at himself in the mirror. He really didn't want to go to this party but he had no choice. It was in honor of Rias' win against Riser, or should he say his win. He shook his head of those arrogant thoughts. He didn't need to be cynical and an uptight prick. He looked at himself in his mirror. He wore a burnt orange jacket with the collar and cuffs being black. He wore a white shirt underneath his jacket. He wore black pants with an orange trim down the sides. He finished his outfit with standard black shoes. He attempted to comb his hair again only for it to go back to a disheveled look. He walked out of his bathroom and out of his room. As he made his way downstairs to the living area, he saw a sight that had him speechless. Kaneko stood waiting in the living room waiting for him. What she wore made him stop. Kaneko had her hair behind her right ear while the left hung freely. Her cat hair clip moved from the right side to the left. She wore a beautiful white dress. It was a strapless dress that hugged her slim body, accentuating her still developing breast. It hugged her hips. It was tight around her butt, making Naruto now notice that she had an extremely attractive butt compared to anyone else he has seen. The dress stopped just past mid-thigh, revealing strong but slender legs to him. "Naruto?" Kaneko asked for the third time since he came down. "Beautiful," Naruto blurted out before closing his mouth. Kaneko's cheeks gained a red tint as she looked away. No matter how much she loved him, she would never get used to him complimenting her. "So," Naruto started, "shall we get going, Kaneko-chan?" he asked. She nodded and wrapped her arm around his. They teleported to the ballroom where the party was and provided plenty of unneeded attention. Ballroom. When Naruto and Kaneko arrived in the ballroom, everyone stopped and looked at them. Many couldn't take their eyes off of them. The women looking at Naruto with hearts in their eyes while the men looked at Kaneko in appreciation besides Issei who only saw lust. Kaneko glared slightly at the women for looking at Naruto but a hand on her shoulder calmed her. She saw Naruto smile at her and she had a small smile also. They made their way across the room to where a small table was, greeting everyone they knew on their way. Once they were at the table, Naruto out a seat for Kaneko before taking the one right next to her. They talked for a little bit before the lights dimmed. Their attention was brought to a spotlight at the end of the room. They then saw their king enter through the doors. The light was on as the audience started clapping. Rias had her hair flowing freely behind her. She wore a strapless red dress that hugged her large breast, accentuating them. It stopped just above mid-thigh. As she got to the middle of the room, the clapping stopped. She then thanked them for coming out and some other stuff that Naruto was too lazy to listen to her. Naruto turned back to Kaneko and started talking to her again until Asia showed up. No matter how many times Naruto saw and heard her speak, he couldn't shake this familiar aura she gave off. Excuse me Naruto-san, Asia said while fidgeting. Naruto is fine Asia, Naruto spoke. She nodded. Naruto, is it fine if I sit with you guys? She asked nervously. Naruto looked over at Kaneko, thought about it for a second. While she was little part of making Naruto upset, she never meant any harm and Kaneko believed she couldn't harm anyone even if she tried. Kaneko nodded and Asia smiled as she took her seat next to Kaneko. They continued talking about random things as even more people approached, much to the annoyance of Kaneko as they were all women. Sona and Tsubaki joined shortly after Asia, and Serafal literally jumped in Naruto's lap before he picked her up and placed her in the chair next to him. Rias meanwhile was watching with a glare the whole time. She wanted nothing more than to go and talk to Naruto. But all these nobles keep approaching her, congratulating her on her victory while Issei was breathing down her and Akeno's neck trying to get their attention. Rias simply ignored him in favor of talking to people while watching Naruto. Akeno had a tougher time as she repeated pushed Issei out the way, saying that he was in her way to get to Naruto. Kiba simply stayed back as he watched his peerage feud with each other as he gazed at Tsubaki. Issei couldn't take it anymore. All the attention was on Naruto and he was going to do something about it. He walked right up to the table he was sitting at. You, he yelled. Naruto simply turned around with an uninterested look. I challenge you to a fight Naruto. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. And what would make you want to challenge me? Naruto asked. Because you're stealing all the oppai for yourself. So I challenge you for Rias Buckus and Akeno's oppai, he shouted, much to the disgust of the women in attendance. I think we can arrange that, a voice said from behind Issei. Everyone looked to see Sirzex and Graphia standing behind Issei. We can have a little spar, so to speak, right now if you would like. Naruto looked uninterested until Sirzex looked at him and spoke as if he was only speaking to Naruto. The winner will receive any wish they desire within my power. Think of it as a way of me making amends. Naruto knew what he was saying but wasn't going to let him off the hook so easily. I accept, Issei shouted. Sure, as long as it is quick. I have a lot of dances to get through today. Naruto sighed as the women at the table giggled at him. Good, then let's begin, shall we? Sirzex spoke before Naruto and Issei were teleported to the arena. It was a small area that seemed to be floating in space. Naruto and Issei stood opposite of each other. The rules are simple, Sirzek's voice rang out through the arena. First one to give up or gets knocked unconscious loses. No fatal or killing blows. Any questions? They shook their heads. Then begin. Issei summoned his gear, but before he could move, Diedrich spoke. Partner, be wary of him and that gear of his. I don't know why, but it seems oddly familiar. It doesn't matter. I am going to kick his ass for stealing the attention from Bucko and Akeno. Diedrich wanted to retort but was interrupted when Naruto spoke. Are you going to stand there all day or fight me? Naruto said. He had already summoned his gear and had his appearance change, his yellow eyes and black markings. I am going to make you eat those words, Issei yelled as he pointed his gauntlet at Naruto. Dragon shot. Issei yelled as a red blast shot towards Naruto. Naruto was slightly surprised until a voice spoke in his head. Block it with the sword. Deciding to trust the voice, Naruto raised the blade just as the beam was in front of him. The beam hit the sword and did something no one watching expected. The beam was absorbed, practically eaten, by Naruto's sword. Naruto was just as shocked as anyone else until the voice spoke again. This sword will devour practically anything it comes in contact with. Does that include yes, just touch it and it will be consumed, and in this case, be added to you as it has a sentient being in it? Naruto nodded before charging at Issei. Issei was still shocked that Naruto absorbed his strongest attack before it was too late. Naruto swung his sword down towards Issei. Issei raised his left arm to block the blow, which made Naruto smirk. He did exactly what he wanted to do. Issei had no feeling but pain. His entire left arm felt like it was being burned and ripped off. The last thing he saw was his gear ripping off his left arm, leaving his human hand behind before losing consciousness. What everyone else saw left them speechless. When Naruto's sword made contact with Issei's gear, the same black marking that were on Naruto's body spread onto Issei's gear, then soon started retracting back into the sword while pulling the gear along with them until it came off Issei's arm and absorbed by the sword. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki Lucifuge. Sirzek's voice rang out through the arena and ballroom. Ballroom Naruto appeared back into the ballroom and was met with stares from the crowd. He raised an eyebrow before they broke out in cheers and clapping. As he walked towards the table where he was sitting, he heard many saying that he would be a great king or how he should get his own peerage. He was broke out of his thoughts when Rias stepped in front of him just as he was about to sit down with Akeno behind her. She was going to speak until her brother beat her to it. Congratulations Naruto, Sirzex spoke as Naruto turned to face him. Now, what is it that you wish for? Everyone in the room went silent wanting to hear his answer. To be given any wish by a Mao was certainly shutting up for. Naruto thought about it long and hard. No matter what, he could not think of anything. He looked around at all the faces watching him closely. He saw what they believed he was going to wish for: money, fame, women, glory. None of that mattered to Naruto. He didn't care for that. It wasn't until he looked at Kaneko until he knew what he wanted to wish for, but not now. If I could, can I use the wish later? I don't want to rush it and regret it later, he lied. He knew what he wanted but wanted to know the whole story before anything rash was made. Sirzex just nodded in approval. That is a wise decision Naruto. You would make a great leader one day. With that, Sirzex walked away with Graphia but not before she kissed him on his head lovingly. Rias finally stepped forward. Naruto, would you like to dance with me? She asked. And me? Akeno said right after. I can't. I promised someone to have the first dance with, and second, third, and so on, Naruto answered quickly. He then walked to Kaneko and took her hand. He led her to the dance floor. They then proceeded to slow dance as the music played with Naruto's hands on her hips and her hands around his neck. She eventually leaned her head against his chest as they danced for a few minutes. Naruto then repeated this process with Serafal, Sona, Tsubaki, and even Asia much to her embarrassment, but she didn't want to be left out. When Naruto and Asia were done dancing, Rias made her way to dance with him but her father spoke. Thank you all for coming to the party. We are sorry to say but this is the end of the night. We hope you enjoyed and have pleasant night. Rias ran to Naruto but was too late as he had grabbed Kaneko and teleported out of the ballroom. Rias would have seen him at school, except tomorrow was Sunday and she was still told to leave him alone. The next day Naruto woke up fresh the next day. He felt alive and energized for some unknown reason. It wasn't until he went to get out of bed that he noticed Kaneko was sleeping in his bed. He felt so comfortable and relaxed with her there but sadly, he had to go work. He gently got out of bed and covered Kaneko with his blanket as he got ready to go to work. When he arrived at his work, he stared at the humble little restaurant. Ichiraku Ramen, a nice little shop ran by Tuchi Ichiraku and his daughter Ayame. He went about his workday with nothing out of the ordinary happening. Once his shift ended, he made his way home with a bag of extra sushi that would have been thrown out as they always got fresh food every day, so Naruto would take some home every now and then for him and Kaneko to share. As he was walking home, he didn't know why he did, but he went through an alleyway towards his home. When he was halfway through it, he saw a black cat sitting on the wall looking at him. Are you lost? He asked it. The cat just tilted its head to the side. Are you homeless? I have some fish here, would you like some? Naruto asked as he squatted down and took out one of the boxes from the bag he was carrying. He opened it and placed a piece in his hand. You want some? The cat jumped off the wall and slowly approached Naruto. It sniffed the piece of sushi before taking the whole thing in its mouth. Naruto took out more pieces and let the cat eat from his open palm. Is that good? He received a purr of approval. I thought you might like it, Kuroka. The cat froze and looked at him. Nya. How did you know? Naruto simply smirked before he saw Kuroka transform to her human form with her cat ears and twin cattails. I sensed your devil energy. No matter how hard you try, I can sense the evil piece within you. Kuroka cursed at her stupidity in getting too close to him. Now, I mean no harm Kuroka, Naruto said, getting her attention back. I just want to know something. She nodded. What really happened that night when you killed your king? That concludes chapter 2. I really hope you enjoyed. This is one of the longest chapters I have written so far. It was over 10,400 words before my author's notes were added. Now once again, I made a mistake when I showed Naruto's gear last chapter. The gauntlet was just a placeholder for when me and Dark King Marcel found a suitable look. This was what we came up with and I forgot to change it. It is just a black arm guard that a swordsman or archer would wear. Now to explain Naruto, he is slightly mentally unstable. As you could tell, he was a bit different or crazy at times during the story. This is due to the fact of witnessing his parents in the orphanage incidents at a young age. Add the fact that he felt he was just being lied to can make someone have a loose screw or two. Big thank you to my partner Dark King Marcel and Crowfeast who reads all my stories. So, if you are here from my other stories, this will be my new upload schedule. I will do 2 Rise of the Dark King chapters and 2 of the Life of Naruto Toju story for every 1 chapter of Grammary Betrayed.
Naruto groaned as the morning sun rays entered his window and hit him in the face. He squeezed his eyes tighter in hopes of blocking out the light, but to no avail. After a few moments of laying there, he finally opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling.
Damn son, that was the most peaceful sleep I've had in a while, Naruto muttered to himself. He rubbed his eyes to get them fully adjusted to the light before trying to sit up in bed. Keyword trying. As he went to sit up, he finally took notice of an unknown weight on his lower torso underneath the covers. Curiously, Naruto lifted them to be met with a certain black-haired woman. "Nya," she mumbled in sleep, a black-haired Nekosho woman to be exact. Naruto was confused and worried, confused because he had no idea why Kuroka was in his bed. He also didn't smell the stench of pheromones, so he knew that they didn't do the deed, so why was she in his bed? And worried because of Kaneko and how she would react. He wasn't worried about Kaneko being upset that a woman was in his bed. He had no idea she was there, so he was in the clear, and he wasn't intimidated with women like most people. Yes, women were scary in their own right, but some people just over-exaggerated. No, he was worried of how she would react if she found Kuroka here. Things could get ugly really quick. As if sensing his inner turmoil, Kuroka sat up and yawned, stretching her arms above her head. This led to the sheets falling off of her torso, revealing that she had no clothing on her upper body. Not a thing, revealing her large, round, perky, busty, lovely breasts, her supple pink nipples that were pointed when they became exposed to the cold morning air. "Nya, that was such a lovely sleep I had," Kuroka purred as she looked at Naruto. "Ahem, Kuroka-san." Naruto cleared his throat. "Nya, don't call me san. Naruto-kun. Call me Kuroka-chan or even your sexy kitty." Kuroka purred as she leaned closer towards Naruto, their faces inches apart as her breasts were barely touching his bare chest. Naruto's eye twitched. "Okay, Kuroka-chan," she pouted. "Why are you in my bed?" Naruto asked a little irritated. "You didn't expect me to sleep on that stiff couch of yours, did you?" She grabbed her breasts sensually. "When you have big breasts like me, you need a comfortable bed to ease the back pain from having these massive breasts." As she spoke, she moved them closer to Naruto's face as if to prove her point. Naruto just stared at her face, avoiding the obvious teasing the well-endowed Nekosho was doing. "Let me rephrase that. Why are you in my home?" Naruto stated as his irritation grew. Kuroka caught this but continued to pester him. "Well, you invited me to stay after our little talk last night, Nya," Kuroka said. Before Naruto could say anything, his door opened. "Naruto-kun, pancakes, now," Kaneko said before she stared at the 2 occupants in Naruto's room. She narrowed her eyes. Before Naruto could try and calm things down and before Kaneko could start attacking her sister, Kuroka decided to speak. "Hi Sharon. I didn't know that you lived with such a hunk. He'd be a great mate and hopefully bring me lots of kittens." What happened next was something Naruto would have never expected. Kaneko's eye twitched. With a cry of "Nya," Kaneko jumped on the bed where she and Kuroka started to have a catfight, literally. In the process of their catfight, Naruto was pushed off the bed from their shoving. He watched in his underwear as the 2 Nekosho clawed and hissed while tearing up his mattress. He then realized that he was only in underwear. He never sleeps in his underwear. He always slept in shorts or sweats and sometimes a light t-shirt. He looked at the edge of the bed and saw that his favorite pair of dark orange and black shorts were shredded, no doubt thanks to the black-haired beauty fighting in his bed. What is she doing here anyways? Naruto thought as he grabbed a pair of clothes and changed before he broke up the fight. He grabbed Kaneko by the waist with one arm and Kuroka by the arm as he pulled them away from each other. "That's enough, you two," Naruto told them. Once they calmed down, Kaneko finally realized who she was fighting with. "Oh, Oni-sama," Kaneko said with sadness and fear. "What are you doing here?" Kuroka smiled and got free of Naruto's hold. "Naruto Koi here invited me over last night," she said as she wrapped her arms around his neck and pushed her breasts into his back. Kaneko just gave Naruto an emotionless stare. While it had no emotion, Naruto knew what that look meant. "I didn't invite her here, Kaneko-chan." Kuroka raised an eyebrow at how the two were interacting with one another. "I ran into her last night and, flashback what really happened that night when you killed your king. Nya, you devils already know. I went mad with power using senjutsu and killed him," Kuroka told him. But Naruto could tell she was hiding the real reason. He was the same way before the nun from the orphanage in Graphia had managed to break down his walls. "I know you're lying." Kuroka looked at him with a little surprise that he caught her lying. Call it a liar's intuition if you will. That caught her interest. "I know you didn't go mad with power. And how would you know that?" Kuroka asked, getting angry. "You don't know what happened that day."
She got in a fighting stance. Naruto remained unfazed.
I know you didn't lose yourself in power, Naruto said. If you did, you would have killed your sister and the rest of your peerage, but you only killed your king, which makes me believe he did something that brought you to killing him. Kuroka stayed silent, which further proved his assumption. He threatened you, didn't he? Kuroka looked down, losing her fighting stance. More importantly, he threatened you with Kaneko, didn't he? That released Kuroka's pent-up feelings. That son of a bitch wanted to use her as some lab experiment if I didn't follow his every command. While he never touched me, he made me do humiliating things while training me into the ground so he could have a powerful senjutsu user. Kuroka yelled. Tears started to flow. I had enough and told him that I wasn't going to train and do the humiliating things anymore. You know what he said to me? That it doesn't matter. That hell just use Sharon as his experiment and make her have his children. To have devil children with the use of senjutsu. She collapsed to her knees. In a fit of rage, I gathered as much senjutsu and murdered him, and you know what, it felt good. I had a blissful smile on my face while I killed him. One of the peerage members saw, and that was how the rumor of me going mad with senjutsu started. I used so much that it flooded the area in senjutsu. Kuroka cried as she looked at the ground. She heard Naruto walk near her, but she didn't have the strength to do anything. If she died here and now, she wouldn't be upset. She got what was holding her down off her chest. She then felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up and saw Naruto on one knee in front of her. You did nothing wrong. I would have done the same thing if I was in your shoes. You risked your life for your sister. If you slaughtered all of the beings on the planet that threatened your sister, I wouldn't blame you then either, he said sincerely. Kuroka looked into his blue eyes and found no deceit in them. They held understanding and compassion. She knew at that moment, he was the one, her mate, the man who would love her and bring her a litter of kittens for her to raise and love. I would also recommend you tell your sister that story. She is still wary around everyone and doesn't talk that much, besides me that is, and she has mixed feelings about you. Kuroka just nodded at his words as they stood up. Well, I am going home to rest. Nice talking to you, Kuroka-san, Naruto said as he started walking away. He never noticed the smile she had on her face, or the fact she was trailing after him towards his home. Flashback end. And that was how I met your sister, Naruto explained to Kaneko, who was sitting on his torn-up bed. Kaneko stayed silent, pondering about what Naruto told her. She then looked straight into Kuroka's eyes. Is it true, Ne-sama? Kaneko asked as her eyes began to tear up. Kuroka nodded her head, her own tears filling her eyes. It's true, Sharon. Everything that Naruto-kun told you was true. Kaneko stood up from the bed and hugged her sister with all her strength. Kuroka returned at full force as she hugged her little sister back. Naruto just stood off to the side and had a small smile on his face. No matter what he has gone through, moments like these always brought a smile to his face. He grabbed his school clothes and went to change before heading downstairs to start on breakfast. Kuo Academy. The rest of the morning went well in Naruto's home. Kaneko and Kuroka spent the morning talking and catching up with one another. While Kaneko was upset that Kuroka abandoned her, she didn't hate her for it like she used to. She was more upset that Kuroka didn't give an explanation as to why she did what she did to her. Kaneko hasn't fully forgiven her, but that doesn't mean she won't. Kuroka needs to earn her trust back, and in Naruto's opinion, just by the happenings of this morning, Kuroka is on the right track. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts when he felt a tug on his jacket arm. He looked to his side and saw Kaneko looking at him. Sorry, didn't realize I stopped walking, Naruto told her as she nodded. They continued walking until they reached the orc room and took their seats on the couch. Naruto sat where Kaneko used to sit, and Kaneko herself sat next to him, leaning her body against his as she pulled out a box of Pocky from who knows where. Rias just stared at them with a frown on her face. She kept trying to mend their relationship back to where it was before she neglected him for Asia and Issei. Little did she know that Akeno was thinking the same thing as she stood next to her king. Kiba sat on the couch across from Naruto and Kaneko with a sad smile on his face. He knew he messed up. They all messed up. While he knew Naruto would be upset, just like anyone else, if they ignored him for as long as they did. Forgetting about him while entering a raiding a game was the final drive to push Naruto past the breaking point. It was not just Ria's fault, but the rest of them also, albeit Kaneko. She had tried to say something during the mess but was drowned out with Rias and Risers yelling. His best friend and brother in all but blood, gone. Their silence was interrupted as the newest members of the peerage walked into the room. Issei looked like someone pissed in his Cheerios while Asia looked worried for some reason. You? Issei shouted while pointing at Naruto. Naruto simply raised an eyebrow before Issei grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up from the couch. Where is my sacred gear? And what happened to Diedrich Uteme? Everyone had a shocked look on their face as they stared at this scene. Issei must have had a death wish if he was pulling this stunt. Answer me, you ass ga. Issei grunted as he felt all the air leave his lungs as he collapsed to his knees holding his stomach. He tried to stand back up only for a foot to kick his back, pinning him to the ground. "Don't you ever dare doing that again, you little shit," Naruto said, frightening everyone in the room besides Kaneko. "To answer your questions, I took your gear and Diedrich from you, and he couldn't be happy to be out of you perverted self," Naruto said as he pushed harder on Issei's back. Naruto lessened the pressure on Issei's back as he heard a voice in his head. Naruto Santo Rias started but got cut off when Naruto put his hand up. "What do you want, Diedrich?" Naruto thought. "You don't have to do this to the boy," Diedrich responded. "He is getting out of hand and I won't let him slide for trying to demand things from me." "I know, but he is my previous host," Diedrich reasoned. "No matter how perverse he is, I still don't want harm to come to him. That is why I want to give him a portion of the gear back." "What? You want to give this guy something that he is incapable of fully using without fulfilling his perverted fantasies?" Naruto yelled in his mind. "Let me explain. I will only give him the power to boost. It will be a powered-down version of the gear that I am sealed in. He won't unlock his balance breaker and juggernaut drive as I will not give him that ability," Diedrich explained. "I only want to give him something that will help defend himself. He didn't ask for this life and I am partially to blame for that. It's not like he wouldn't have jumped at the opportunity to become a devil if he knew he could have a harem," Naruto replied. A new voice spoke up. "I say you do it, partner," a booming voice said. "And where have you been this whole time, partner?" Naruto asked. "I was making those modifications that we talked about," the new voice said before continuing. "Plus I say that is a great deal for you. Think about it. You give him some power back and you can see less of your king. In a sense, you are still keeping your promise as you gave Issei some power to protect her." "Thanks, roommate," Diedrich said to the other being inside of Naruto. "No problem, you overgrown lizard." Before they could start their usual bickering, Naruto spoke. "How'd I do it?" "The same way you took it from him," Naruto nodded. He looked around the room and saw everyone staring at him besides Issei, who was getting an eyeful of some ants eating crumbs from Kaneko's snacks. "Issei, what would you do for your gear back?" Naruto said, ending the long silence that plagued the room. "What do you mean?" Issei said, wheezing as Naruto still had his foot planted on him. "I am asking if you would protect those in this peerage if you had your gear back? At the risk of your own life to save theirs," Issei nodded his head. "Fine, congratulations," Naruto said as he summoned his sword. Before anyone could ask why he summoned his sacred gear, he stabbed Issei's left hand. "Ah!" he yelled as he saw the blade go cleanly through his hand before passing out. "Naruto. What are you doing?" Rias tried to ask but stopped when she saw a familiar red gauntlet appear on Issei's left hand and lower arm. "I gave him back his gear, albeit less powerful as it once was. It is no longer Longinus and only holds one ability. Boost. The rest and real gear reside in me still, as what he has is just a powered-down copy," Naruto explained. "That has tied him for life. It cannot be extracted and will disappear when he dies. It is plainly a pseudo-sacred gear." Before Rias and the others could begin to question him, a red teleportation circle appeared underneath Naruto and teleported him away. Rias only muttered one word, "Ni-sama, underworld." Naruto stumbled out of the circle and would have collapsed if a pair of slender arms didn't catch him. Naruto let out an oomph as his face landed in a valley of breasts. When he pulled his face out of them, he looked up and saw the beautiful face of his smiling mother looking at him. He let a small, loving smile grace his lips as he returned the embrace that Grafia was giving him. "Gray-chan. Why don't you show love like that with me around work?" Naruto heard his father say a few feet away. Naruto and Grafia separated and both took on their stoic faces as they looked at the leader of the underworld. Searsex was crying anime tears while sulking next to them. "Searsex-sama, I suggest we hurry. The others have been waiting for quite some time now," Grafia said in her business tone. "You're right. Let's get a move on, my family," Searsex said, completely adopting a more serious look, foregoing his crying form. Searsex started walking down the hallway they were in with Grafia and Naruto following behind him. Only when they started moving did Naruto start to take in the area he was in. The halls had paintings and pictures of famous and historical devils throughout the time the original Lucifer fell from heaven. He realized they were in the Devil Hall. This is where the Satans met for important meetings and the more important and powerful devils when something involved the community. Before he could ask Grafia why he was suddenly brought here, they reached the room Searsex was leading them to. He threw the doors open and Naruto saw 4 stands at the end of the room that were raised. 3 of the 4 seats were currently occupied with Searsex walking towards the empty one. The first one on the right was occupied by none other, the ultimate cosplayer and Siscon, Seraphal Leviathan, formerly Citri. She was animatedly talking to the occupant next to her. The person who was listening to Serafal was Falbium Asmodeus. He was currently snoring as he drooled in his seat as he listened to Serafal. Naruto turned to the third person sitting when he heard chuckling. Who he saw was his father's best friend since childhood, Ajuka Beelzebub. He was laughing at his fellow Saiyans and King's attitudes. And finally, Sirzex, who finally took his seat next to Ajuka. All right. Sirzex yelled, let's get this meeting underway. With that, Serafal went quiet. Falbium woke up and any signs of drool and drowsiness gone, and Ajuka just shook his head while looking at Naruto. Naruto quirked an eyebrow at his current situation. He looked at his mother and saw she was standing next to his father's stand. Naruto Uzumaki, yo Lucifuge. Naruto cut off Sirzex. The four Saiyans had a look of surprise at what he said. What was that, Naruto? Ajuka questioned the blonde. Lucifuge, my name is Naruto Uzumaki Lucifuge, Naruto answered. I decided to take my parents' last name as to honor them. Wouldn't you take your father's family name then? Serafal questioned. Naruto shook his head. I wish to honor my mother's fallen kin. While not blood, she is without a doubt my mother and I wish to keep her lineage alive for her, Naruto responded. Three of the Saiyans nodded in respect of his decision. Sirzex meanwhile had a different reaction. His heart swelled with pride and respect that his son wanted to keep his wife's family alive even if their blood was going to be passed down with Milika's, who had the Gremory name. Graphia let a single tear of joy and love fall from her face as she heard her son speak fondly of her family. Well, Naruto Uzumaki Lucifuge, Sirzex started again, we have summoned you here to talk about your future as a devil. Naruto only looked on with a questioning gaze as if waiting for an explanation. Ajuka spoke next. You showed that you have strong capabilities and tactics when fighting your enemy. Ajuka paused before continuing. This was observed by us and the rest of the devil world with the raiding game against Riser Phoenix, and not only did you beat him, you actually wounded a Phoenix. A family that can literally grow back their limbs at will, he finished. Naruto then looked at Falbium as if he was going to continue. Falbium just shrugged before resting his chin on the palm of his hand. So with a mass majority of the devil community and our consent, we have decided that you have the potential of having your own peerage. Serafal said while flailing her arms excitedly, isn't it great, Naruto? You can have your own peerage and become a high-class devil. However, Sirzex spoke before anyone else could get a word in. You will have to answer some questions honestly to see if you are fit and capable of being a king. The recent displays from Riser Phoenix have made us change our procedure, Sirzex said. You see, he heavily relied off of his Phoenix blood to win. While his peerage is strong in their own right, were taken out many times during his games. He won mostly because of his regenerative powers which benefited him, but if he was to face a stray fallen or rogue exorcist, he and his peerage will be heavily injured and possibly killed as his Phoenix blood is just as weak to holy items and attacks just like regular devils, Ajuka explained. So we will be testing your ability to lead and your mental ability too. Serafal continued for Ajuka. Ironically, Falbium was started to doze off. We want to make sure that you treat your peerage right and don't intend to turn them into devils just to add them to your harem if you choose to have one. Riser gave us the inspiration for these new changes, she finished. So Naruto, Sirzex took the floor again. We know that you put others' well-being before your own, so we know that you would treat your peerage as your own kin. So now that leaves the question. What would your intentions be if you were granted to have a peerage? A long silence took place as they waited for Naruto to answer. He was thinking hard on what he would do. So many possibilities and things he could do with a strong and functional peerage, he just didn't know what he wanted. After a long time thinking, he came up with his answer. Nothing. A look of shock took place on everyone's faces, even Graphia's as the words left his mouth. I wouldn't do anything. I mean, what would I do? I could use them to make money from countless contracts, but then what would I do with all the money? It would be useless after getting everything my peerage and I would need. I could use them to find the people responsible of my family's murder. He grabbed his green necklace around his neck. But that would lead me down the path of an avenger and I've seen what it does to someone, he said as Kiba came to mind. Don't get him wrong. He would love to talk to his parents and grandparents' killer, but what would he gain from actively seeking that person? He would kill them when the time came. So that leaves me with doing nothing. I will live with my family as I will not see them as servants as most of the devil population sees them as. I will not force or manipulate anyone to become part of my family. They have to want to become part of my family and I have to want them to be part of my family, Naruto explained. They all nodded their heads with understanding and even more respect at the young man before them. Sirzex stood up and gave him a fatherly hug at his son's words and maturity. His moment was ruined, however, when he felt an unexpected pain in his stomach as he released Naruto from the hug as he hunched over trying to regain his breath. That was for not telling me I had a sacred gear, old man, Naruto said bitterly. Ka-sama explained to me why you didn't, and while I understand that you didn't want me to overwork myself or others to find out and something bad happening, You could have at least informed me when I left to the human world so I wasn't surprised and angry when I unlocked it. Naruto vented. Sirzex put his head down in shame. I am sorry son, but I just didn't want people to target you because of it, and while I could sense it was powerful, I wanted you to live a normal life as much as you could, Sirzex explained. I see, Naruto responded. That's fine then, he nodded. So am I forgiven? Sirzex said childishly. HMPH, you're far from forgiven old man. Remember that phase when Malikas was able to walk and talk and he wanted to play? Naruto questioned. Sirzex immediately paled and Graphia was panicking on the inside. One of the only times Naruto smiled is when he and Malikas pulled pranks on Sirzex and the more grumpy male staff members. Even Ria's father Zeoticus when they visited, the mess left behind was so bad that Graphia needed a handful of others to help clean up. I see you caught on to what I am talking about. You will be forgiven when I stop, and I feel Malikas needs a lot of learning to do before he starts his own family with his pieces. Sirzex just nodded weakly as he made his way back to his seat. That brings another matter to attention. What is your sacred gear and who is sealed in it? Ajuka questioned. Being the intelligent man he is, he noticed when Naruto was talking to his gear and only knew as much as he said about his gear. Being the counter to the complete Excalibur was something, but no one has ever heard about such a sword. I will not give out that information at this time as I don't even know its full capabilities yet, Naruto lied. He and his partner have talked for hours of what he was now capable of. You dare lie and withhold information from the Saiyans? Ajuka raised his voice. Naruto just smirked. I just punched and threatened Lucifer. I think you know exactly what I would do, uncle, Naruto said. Ajuka cooled down and chuckled. That turned into full-blown laughter at what Naruto said. It was true. He was essentially Naruto's uncle. Sirzex and Ajuka being best friends their entire life lead to him being an uncle figure to Naruto and Malikas. You pass. Seraphol cheered as she was giggling along with the other Saiyans. Naruto looked at her questioningly before Falbium finally spoke. You see, we did all this just to see what you would do. We all know you are capable of being a great king, but we wanted to see how you would react to people questioning you and demanding things. Your bluntness and lack of respect may be unmannered, but we wanted to see that you weren't just sucking up and spilling important information just to have things go your way. If you were captured and interrogated with your options of death or freedom, we saw that you would most likely die before selling out your friends and allies for your own safety. That was showed when you rejected Ajuka's question about your gear, Falbium explained. Everyone's jaws dropped. Falbium just blinked and looked at their faces. What? That is probably the most you ever spoke without showing any signs of drowsiness or falling asleep, Sirzex said. Falbium just sweat dropped. You people are troublesome, Falbium said before he put his head down. Seraphol snickered at her fellow Satan. Now, we have something important to tell you, Sirzex said. You do know how the evil pieces work, correct? Of course I do. A set of 16 pieces 15 if you take out the king, and each piece grants or boosts certain traits. I don't care to explain as we all know what they do, Naruto answered. That's great, but we also have mutations, Ajuka said. Before Naruto could say he knew about it, Ajuka continued, but of all the pieces created, one came out as an anomaly. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You see, this piece was made just like all the others but became mutated like some do in special cases. But the thing is, it was the only piece in the set besides the king piece. No rooks, bishops, knights, pawns, or queen. This piece was the ultimate mutation as it had all the other pieces melded to it. Naruto was shocked. A piece that held a whole peerage in it, the power the piece must have. I am not sure what caused this to happen, as many things caused this anomaly, but what was a factor was the massive amount of power that the king held when making the pieces caused them to mold together, Ajuka said, and this was the most powerful being in the underworld who made that piece. Naruto realized who it was. It was you. Naruto pointed at Sirzex, but before he could respond, realization dawned on him. Wait. You only had one piece. And you gave Tias that piece to use on me, so that means. That's correct, son. You hold the power of an entire peerage in your body. That is why you are so adaptable to every technique and weapon alike that you come in contact. The healing of a bishop, speed and skills of a knight, power of a rook, the pawns keeping them stable, and all the pieces' attributes are doubled with your queen piece as a queen possess powers of bishops, knights, and rooks, Sirzex said. I see, Naruto muttered. Yes, you have the most powerful piece ever created within you, Sirzex said. Naruto nodded. Now Naruto, Ajuka said, if you head over to my place, we can get you your evil pieces, but to cure my curiosity, do you have anyone in mind that you would like to join your peerage? Naruto didn't even think about it. Nekosho, Kuroka. The room went deathly silent at that name. Are you mad? Ajuka asked. Naruto just gave him a look that made Ajuka look like an idiot. He knew Naruto was crazy. I am sorry, son, but we cannot allow that to happen. She killed a high-class devil and one from the original 72 pillars at that, Searsex told his son. But that is where you are wrong. I still have that wish that you gave me from defeating Riser. Searsex felt holes burning into his form from the other occupants staring at him. That may be true, but she is still a wildcard. She is too That is where you are wrong. Naruto interrupted Ajuka. Naruto then spent the next few minutes explaining what happened last night between him and Kuroka. After he finished explaining to them what happened, Searsex spoke. That is interesting. He looked at his fellow Saiyans and they nodded. We would like to discuss this in private. If you could please wait outside with Graphia. Naruto nodded and followed Graphia out the room. Once they closed the doors to the meeting room, Graphia hounded her son. What are you thinking? Kuroka is a dangerous S-class stray. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Naruto didn't let his mother's yelling faze him. I am not doing this just for Mikao-sama. I am doing it for Kaneko-chan. Graphia let go of her anger at the mention of the white-haired Neko. Graphia knew of the love the Neko had for her son. She knew the girl would never harm her son, and in her personal opinion, she believed Kaneko to be the best match for her son even if she looked a bit younger. Mom, I read about the Neko race. Kaneko is in danger. Graphia's eyes widened. They are born with the ability to use senjutsu and begin to absorb it in their body when they are born. It is what helps them grow and mature. Kaneko may not know it, but she and her sister were always gathering senjutsu in their body. Her sister killing her king and then abandoning her left her broken. She stopped gathering senjutsu in her body and it is slowly becoming weaker and not maturing, hence why she hasn't started to go into heat at all. She was supposed to start when she hit puberty, but this has been holding her back. Graphia's eyes widened at her son's explanation. She had no idea Kaneko was in any danger. She couldn't help but feel proud that her son was willing to go this far for his friends and hopefully future wife as Graphia saw it. Before Graphia could respond, the doors to the room opened, prompting them to walk back inside. Graphia stood by the stands that the Saiyans were sitting while Naruto retook his spot in the center of the room. Searsex was the first to speak up. We have come to a decision, he started. We have allowed you to take Kuroka into your family. However, there are a few conditions that need to be met. Naruto nodded in understanding. First, she only has one chance of joining your peerage. If she does not make the decision when you confront her, then the deal is off. Next is that you both will be staying here in the underworld for a certain amount of time. We want to monitor her and your ability to control her. She must also wear a tracking seal on her. It must remain on her for a probation period of 1 year at the least. Her actions will decide if it gets removed or stays on longer. Naruto nodded. These were all fair requirements for someone who killed a high-class devil. And finally, we will not interfere with her previous king's family or associates, so if they come looking for her, it will be your responsibility to handle the situation. We will keep quiet about her as long as no one finds out or you find it is right to reveal such information. Searsex finished. I understand completely, Naruto told them. Searsex had a smile on his face. Alright then. Let's go get you your pieces. Searsex exclaimed before running out the room. Everyone else walked to where he ran. Kuo Academy looks like I have surpassed you, Senpai. A blue-haired girl said to the sitting form of Kiba in the area behind the school grounds. Kiba remained silent as he stared at the church member standing girl in front of him. That was fun, Issei. But you seriously need some work if you want to try and beat me, came the voice of the other member from the church. She was talking to the prone form of Issei as he looked up at the girl. Zenobia, are we done yet? She asked her blue-haired companion. I believe so, Irina. Let's get on our way, Zenobia said to the now-known Irina. Rias and the other members of her peerage just looked on as the two church members easily defeated her knight and pawn. While she was angry, she was also disappointed. Angry that they humiliated her and her peerage, but disappointed in herself. Only now did she realize how much her peerage members needed training. Sure, they were using holy swords, but they outclassed Kiba and Issei in skill and discipline. She now knew that if Riser wasn't as arrogant and took their raiding game seriously, she would have lost terribly. They only did as well as they did because he and his peerage underestimated them. Rias watched as the two girls started to walk away from them. Her eyes widened when she saw a red circle appear in the path in front of Irina and Zenobia. Naruto appeared outside the Kuo clubhouse where he sensed his fellow peerage members. He raised an eyebrow at the two members from the church that were here. Irina and Zenobia stopped as a blonde boy, or young man as his features said otherwise, appeared in front of their path. They were just going to walk around him, but they felt their pieces of Excalibur pull towards Naruto. Something about him was attracting their swords to him. Zenobia, being the blunt and rash person she is, drew her sword and pointed it at him. She felt the feeling grow more intense as she did this. Why are you pointing your sword at me? Naruto questioned. Zenobia Quarta, and I want you to duel with me, devil. My sword has a strong pull towards you similar to when it is near other fragments of Excalibur, Zenobia said. Aren't you tired? I mean, from the looks of it, you already fought judging by those two, he said pointing at Kiba and Issei. Those two were nothing, we disposed of them quickly, you however, radiate power and the blood of a swordsman. I can feel it within you. I wish to fight you now, Xenovia told him. Naruto, don't do it. Rias started but was cut off by Naruto. Fine, let's fight then, Naruto said summoning his sacred gear. This time, however, his arm piece was different, while it remained mostly black, a gold lining was added just how Issei's gear was, with a familiar green gem in it. They each backed away and took their stances, Xenovia with a smirk on her face as she looked at Naruto's blade. It sure was a beauty, but that didn't stand up against Excalibur Destruction. Excalibur Destruction granted her the power to destroy anything she wants. Naruto meanwhile was having a talk with his first tenant. What is this feeling? I feel drawn to her sword, and she said she feels the same thing. That is Excalibur, or at least a fragment of it. That is my sword's, now yours, counterpart. Although this is nothing compared to when it was put together as when they clashed, it was as if they were two normal swords. Naruto nodded in agreement before looking back at Xenovia. Both stood there eyeing each other up and down, looking for any weaknesses. Naruto saw many while Xenovia planned on overpowering him with Excalibur Destruction. Xenovia broke the stare down as she charged at Naruto with her sword drawn back. She swung Excalibur Destruction over her, bringing it down onto Naruto's head, hoping to end the fight in one move. Clang! Xenovia and those around had wide eyes as Naruto blocked the holy sword with his. Xenovia had to jump away as Naruto pushed her back with brute strength. What's with the face? It looks like someone stole your cookie, Naruto said with a smirk. Xenovia glared at him. How did you block my strike? Excalibur Destruction lets me destroy anything, so your sword should have shattered, Xenovia asked. I see, Naruto responded. Well, this sword is the counterpart of Excalibur. It negates all the power Excalibur holds and vice versa, Naruto explained. She nodded with the others who didn't fully know Naruto's gear's powers except Kaneko. Naruto explained to her what he could do and potentially do in the future. However, that was when Excalibur was in one piece. You only have a portion of its power, so my sword overpowers yours. I forfeit, Xenovia said. What? Irina exclaimed. Xenovia gave up. Irina, I see the error in my calculation. I don't have the strength to fight him after wasting energy on the blonde knight. Plus, we need to hurry and find the other missing pieces. Irina reluctantly nodded and followed her friend out of the school grounds. Xenovia gave one last glance at Naruto, something Naruto and Kaneko noticed, before disappearing out of sight. Naruto, where have you been? Rias was the first to speak up. Your brother requested a meeting with me, Naruto said, not looking at her while walking to where Kaneko was. He whispered something in her ear and she nodded before they started to make their way out of the school. What was the meeting about? Rias asked, a bit peeved that Naruto brushed her off so easily. It is classified, I can't talk about it, Naruto said, walking away with Kaneko. Hey, Teme. Bucko asked you a question, Issei yelled. Naruto stopped dead in his tracks and let out a menacing aurora. Issei found it hard to breathe as it was focused on him. I just gave you back what made you useful and needed, and you have the gall to yell at me? Naruto menacingly said to Issei. Issei gulped in fear at the way Naruto was looking at him. If you really want to know, go ask your brother, Rias. He was the one who said to keep quiet about the meeting, considering all of the Saiyans were there too, he said before a teleportation circle enveloped Naruto and Kaneko as he didn't feel like walking home anymore. Everyone just watched in silence as they teleported away. Rias hung her head as she made her way back to the clubroom. Akeno had a sad smile as she followed her queen. Kiba frowned as he walked home and hopefully blow off some steam. Issei stuffed his hands in his pockets as he began to walk home. Asia bit her lip as she didn't know what to do. She wanted to follow Issei back to his and her temporary home, but she also wanted to know something. She was at a crossroads. One way was to Akeno's home. The other was where she would find her answer. After moments of mental debate, she decided to head to Akeno's home where she was currently staying. She'll confront her issue in the future when the time was right. Naruto's home. When Naruto and Kaneko teleported home, they were met with a sight that confused Naruto and made Kaneko fume. Kuroka was wearing one of Naruto's muscle shirts that was a bit tight around her chest. If the amount of cleavage she was showing was any indication, it went to her mid-thigh that covered private region, which was good considering she didn't have on any pants. She was currently laying on the couch watching TV as she noticed them in the room. She stood up and hugged Naruto, much to Kaneko's chagrin. Where have you been, Naruto-koi? It was so lonely without you, Kuroka purred. Why are you wearing my shirt? Naruto asked, ignoring her teasing. She backed away and struck a sexy pose. My clothes were dirty, so I washed them and grabbed your shirt while mine dried. I tried Chirones but they were too small for my babies, she said grabbing her breasts. Unless you like that then I could go change for you, she said sultrily. Naruto just shook his head and sighed. Kaneko-chan, could you get the food out for dinner? A nod, and Kuroka-san. A flirtatious wink. Go change back into your clothes please. She pouted and went to the laundry room followed by a pleased Kaneko at her denied advances. Naruto went upstairs to his private bathroom and freshened up before going back downstairs and making dinner. It was a simple fish and rice meal as he needed to get this over with quick. When they were done eating, Naruto led them to the living room for the next order of business. Kuroka, Naruto said as he stood in front of the Nekoshis sitting on his couch, you said that you were on the run, correct? No affiliation to any other faction, correct? She nodded. Naruto nodded in understanding. Would you like to stay here then? Both the Nekoshis' eyes widened at what he said. I know it must be hard for you being on the run all the time. You could stay here and be close to Kaneko. No more being on the run and hiding. That would be wonderful Nya. Kuroka shouted with joy. She looked at her sister and saw she had tears in her eyes. Kuroka was happy that Kaneko wanted her to stay but Kuroka knew better. What's the catch? Kuroka asked losing all playfulness from before. Figured you knew something was up, Naruto said as he pulled a black box out from behind his back. I was called into a meeting with the 4 Satans today. It was about me becoming a high-class devil and gaining my own evil pieces. He opened the box. Inside were a full set of orange chess pieces, minus the king piece of course. Along with gaining these pieces, I also had a wish from a previous accomplishment. He and Kaneko shared a look. Naruto had told her what he planned in spending that wish on and she agreed with it. I wished for your charges against you to be dropped and no longer labeled as a stray. Kuroka's eyes shot open at what he said. A wish for whatever one desired and he wanted to help her with it. She couldn't help but feel touched even if she knew that he was only doing it for her and Kaneko. They granted it with some conditions. Kuroka nodded and asked about the conditions. After Naruto explained everything to her, she sat in silence for a few moments. I'll do it, Kuroka said breaking the silence. If I have to be tracked and monitored wherever I go, I'll do it as long as I can be with my family, she said looking at Kaneko. Both had tears running down their faces as they hugged one another. That's great to hear, Naruto said with a small smile at the sisters embracing each other. We'll leave in the morning to the underworld. Kaneko, could you tell Rias that I will be spending time in the underworld for a while? Kaneko nodded as she and Kuroka separated. Thank you, Naruto said before heading to his room and leaving the sisters alone to celebrate. All Naruto knew was that this was going to be an interesting week. Next day underworld Naruto and Kuroka teleported in front of his parents' home in the underworld. Searsex and Graphia stood in front of them awaiting their arrival with Malikas next to Graphia as Naruto informed them the day before. Behind them stood many members of the staff that helped out around the house but one person caught his interest. Revel Phoenix. Before he could ask about it, someone ran to him. Naruto Nichan, Malikas yelled as he hugged Naruto. Hey there Otuto. How are you? Naruto asked. Good. I've been practicing all those pranks you taught me. The staff grumbled as he said that. Naruto let out a small chuckle as he put Malikas on his back. Naruto. Glad to see ya. And you too Kuroka? Searsex exclaimed. Naruto just nodded and Kuroka smiled nervously. Come. Let's get moving, Searsex said as everyone started to head back towards the house. Before Kuroka could follow Naruto, Graphia stood in front of her. She stared up at the underworld's strongest queen. Hi Graphia-sama, Kuroka stuttered. While Kuroka was a S-rank devil, she was still no match for the literal Ice Queen. Listen here Kuroka-san, Graphia said coldly. I don't care what you did before and what you do now, but there is one thing you must know. Kuroka nodded for her to continue. If you hurt my son, I will see personally that you are neutered like the common house cat. Kuroka gulped and nodded at her words. Good, Graphia said before they joined the group again. Hey, Naruto started. What are you doing here Oju-sama? Naruto asked, not to sound rude but I was not aware you would be here too. Revel just blushed and turned her face away from him, too embarrassed to speak. Graphia shot a glare at her husband as he began to sweat. Haha, you see, funny story actually, Searsex started. She's here because, 1 week later an entire week has passed since Kaneko informed Rias about Naruto leaving to the underworld. It could not have been the most stressful week in her entire week. First was Irina and Xenovia coming to tell her not to meddle with their search for the missing Excalibur fragments. Then Kiba disappeared on some personal agenda to destroy those fragments. And then she found out that Issei had drug Asia and Sona's pawn, Saji, into a secret mission with Irina and Xenovia to find Kiba and the Holy Swords. She then found them all only for Kiba to disappear again with the church members as they tried to track down Valpyr, who was in charge of the Holy Sword project which was the reason Kiba was a devil now, and the now one-armed Freed who was with the Fallen when Issei became a devil. And now here they were, looking up at one of the leaders of Grigori. Kokabeel, with Freed and Valpyr below him, Freed holding one of the fragments of Excalibur in his left arm and had the other pieces under his coat. This is the ultimate way to start a war. By killing the Satan's younger siblings. Kokabeel shouted as he looked over the school. Freed had took care of most of the devils. The pervert was unconscious somewhere in the school when Freed kicked him through the windows on the first floor. The blonde knight was holding his side that was bleeding courtesy of Freed. The white-haired girl, the Gramarye heiress, and her queen were getting healed by the ex-nun. The white-haired girl bleeding from her mouth and a possible broken arm. She has seen better days and probably one of the more injured ones besides the knight. Maybe the perv, but he couldn't see his condition at the moment. And the two church members were barely hanging on to consciousness just behind Rias and her group. Freed was a very capable psychopath even with one arm functional. He looked up and saw the Sea-Tree heiress and her peerage were making a barrier to keep the destruction from reaching the humans. It didn't matter, he would start a war today. Time for you to die, devils, Kokabeel shouted as he raised his hands. He started to form a light spear above his head. It began to grow in size every few seconds until it was the size of the school building. Die you devil shits, Kokabeel shouted as he was about to throw the spear. He went to throw it but stopped as a red circle appeared in front of Rias and the others. He smiled maniacally as he saw who it was. Naruto had teleported to the school as his and Kuroka's temporary probation period was over. Kuroka was with him and Revel was there also due to certain reasons. If it isn't Lucifer's son himself. Kokabeel laughed as he saw Naruto. This is great. I'll kill his son and sister. I will finally have my war that I have been looking for. Naruto ignored him and looked around. Judging from Kokabeel's words and the state of the school, Naruto was able to figure things out. He was slightly pissed as he was sure he would need to help clean up the mess here. He went from pissed to a whole set of emotions as he saw the beaten form of Kaneko. He wasted no time in running over to her. Kuroka saw Naruto run and looked to where he was headed. When she saw her sister, she followed suit. Revel chased both of them as they ran. Rias for her part was shocked that Revel was with Naruto and even more shocked that Kuroka was with him. Kaneko, who did this to you? Naruto asked with a worried face. She just looked up at Naruto and Sharon with a weak smile on her face. Naruto-kun, Oni-sama, you're back. Naruto wanted to ask her again but got his answer as someone spoke. Hey Whisker-kun. I'll kill you for taking my arm you devil shit. I had to settle to beating your girlfriend there but now that you're here, Freed grinned. I can give you a taste of your own medicine. Freed. Shut the hell up for once, Kokabeel yelled. Valpyr simply stayed silent as he watched everything happen before him. Well, son of Lucifer, how does it feel to see your friends on death's door? Kokabeel asked. I know you missed my grand speech earlier but to cut to the chase, the factions are at peace because God is dead and you guys are trying to build up your devil numbers again, so I will take the initiative and lead the fallen to victory. Naruto clenched his fists in anger and glared at Kokabeel as his eyes started to shift from blue to yellow and the black markings covering his body. I'll kill you. Naruto shouted as he spread his devil wings and summoned his gear. He flew straight at Kokabeel and attempted to slash at him. Kokabeel being as old as him and having so many pairs of wings was able to dodge Naruto's angry strikes. Every slash Naruto made, Kokabeel would make his own move and hit Naruto with a light spear. This continued for a few minutes with Naruto covered in blood and sweat while Kokabeel still looked clean. AAARRRRGGGGHHH, die you piece of shit. Naruto yelled as he made one final charge at Kokabeel. Kokabeel dodged the sword strike and stabbed Naruto through the abdomen. You are the first to fall in this war. Kokabeel whispered in Naruto's ear. Kokabeel then saw the necklace hanging around his neck and grinned sadistically. I remember this necklace. It was on the old hag I killed along with her family in search for that gear I felt. I can't believe I missed one. But looks like I managed to take care of things then. Naruto's eyes widened before they were filled with anger, the markings covering almost every inch of his body. U.S. son of a bitch. Naruto choked up as blood was coming out his mouth. Kokabeel just laughed as he let go of Naruto, sending him crashing to the ground leaving a crater. While Naruto was fighting Kokabeel, Kuroka was fighting Freed. For a one-armed maniac, he held his own against Kuroka pretty well until she started to draw in more senjutsu. He was on the ropes until Naruto fell and distracted Kuroka. He threw out a bomb that created holy light letting him make his escape. Naruto only stayed conscious to see Revel and Kaneko to hover over him saying his name. Mindscape Naruto laid in a vast sea of darkness. Are you just going to give up? A voice echoed through the darkness. I am not strong enough. I can't protect them. I'll never be strong enough. They'll just die like my parents and grandparents, Naruto said as tears escaped his eyes. That's a load of crap. The voice said. Naruto sat up and looked around. He saw a silhouette walking in the darkness, which was confusing to him. As it got closer, it seemed as if it was growing in size. As it was in front of Naruto, it was about a foot taller than him. No partner of mine is going to give up while I am still conscious. It's over how? Naruto yelled at the now revealed How. How stood at about a height of 6 feet 8 inches, he had dark black hair and yellow eyes, he had a toned build but looked like he could outrun anyone. No, it's not. It won't be until you're 6 feet under and can't breathe anymore, How said. But I can't win. He's too strong, Naruto yelled. Idiot. Do you not remember what I told you when we first met? How yelled. It doesn't matter how strong you are. As long as you know what you're fighting for, you will always be strong. That little cat of yours is out there right now waiting for you to fight for them, How yelled. Don't make the same mistake I did and try to fight alone. That led to my downfall. I may have been the king of darkness, but being alone led me to being here courtesy of God. How kept yelling. Now, are you going to fight or just lay there and let them beat you black and blue? I agree with the asshole, Naruto, came the voice of Naruto's other tenant. Get up and fight. Fight for your loved ones. Diedrich yelled. Naruto slowly stood up on 2 feet and stared at the two, How in front of him and Diedrich a few feet away in a ring of fire. I'll fight. I'll kill all those who dare harm my family, Naruto yelled with determination. Both beings smirked at his new attitude. Is the preparations ready, How? Naruto asked. They are, but your mind isn't. You are still fighting your darkness. You will be consumed if you use it too long. As long as I can fight with Ute, I'll worry about it later. I need to protect my friends. How chuckled at his enthusiasm. That's it. Now give them hell, How told him. Before Naruto could disappear, Diedrich spoke up. Naruto, try and channel my gear when you do How's. I will also lend my power to help. Naruto nodded as he left his mindscape. Naruto jolted upright as he opened his eyes. He looked around and saw Kaneko, Kuroka, and Revel next to him. Naruto-kun, you're okay, Kaneko said with tears. I am. Thank you, Kaneko-chan, Naruto said as he stood up. Naruto-sama, Don I am fine Oju-sama, Naruto waved Revel off. Kuroka, take care of Valpier for me. Kokebiel's mine. Kuroka nodded and went to find Valpier. So the son of Lucifer comes back for more, Kokebiel shouted. You're going to die here today, Kokebiel, Naruto said. Before Kokebiel could respond, Naruto started to summon his gear. He held his sword in his right hand and looked at it. Do it, came the voices of How and Diedrich. AARRRRGGGHHH Naruto yelled as he began to focus on what How told him to. Everyone watched in awe as they felt the raw energy that Naruto was absorbing before an explosion happened, blocking Naruto from their view. When the dust settled, they saw Naruto standing in a suit of armor. He wore an entire black suit of armor that covered his body. His helmet let his face be shown, his yellow eyes shining as they looked around, black spike-like objects coming out with yellow ring on them, purple orbs on his chest and arms. But what surprised them even more was the big green gem in the middle of his chest and dragon wings and tails coming from his back. Yu-Gi-Oh! The Supreme King. His sword was changed also. It was still midnight black, but the blade was a lot thicker and longer. The handle became more rounded. The blade had dark red circles towards the bottom and a red line extending towards the length of the blade. Dark Excalibur Fate Stay Night. This form, this power, Naruto said as he clenched his fists. I can feel the power, Naruto said as his voice became slightly demonic. He looked at Kokebiel. I'll kill you, Kokebiel, Naruto said with an evil grin. Before Kokebiel could move, Naruto was behind him and kicked him towards the ground. When Kokebiel got up, he was punched by Naruto, sending hurling through multiple trees. I am unstoppable, ha ha ha. Naruto laughed maniacally. Kokebiel flew into the air. How dare you touch me? I will end your life, Kokebiel said as he threw a light spear at Naruto. Naruto just stood there as it struck his chest. Kokebiel smiled in satisfaction only to stare wide-eyed as the spear dispersed as it touched Naruto. My turn. Naruto smiled. He disappeared from view only to appear behind Kokebiel and kneed him in the back. He then axe kicked him, sending him to the ground again. Before he hit the ground though, he appeared below him and put his fist in Kokebiel's face. Kokebiel collapsed to the ground, barely conscious. Naruto straddled his chest and began to pummel his face, each blow making a sick crunching noise. After every punch, Naruto would use boost and add more power to the blow. Stop it now, a voice shouted. Naruto stopped and looked up to the sky and saw what looked like a man in a white suit of dragon armor. Who are you? Naruto asked. That is none of your business, however. That man is my business. He pointed to Kokebiel. Hand him over. This man? Naruto grinned as he held Kokebiel up by his hair, and before anyone could move, Naruto sliced his head clean off with his sword. "You'll pay for that," the white-suited male said. Naruto didn't wait as he charged at the mysterious person. "Divide." Naruto froze halfway to him and fell face first into the ground, his new gear disappearing, making him lose conscious from using his new power and having half of it taken away instantly. However, he still had black markings all over his body. "Ah!" the white-suited male yelled. The white wings started to turn black before they fell off. He quickly replaced them, but one could tell he was worn out. That was the last thing Naruto saw before he blacked out for a second time. The following day, when Naruto awoke the next day, he found himself in his home. He woke to Kaneko and Kuroka in bed naked with him using the healing method that was popular with many devils. He made his way to the restroom to get cleaned up. When he looked in the mirror, he froze. His eyes were still yellow and he had the black markings all over his body. Kaneko, Kuroka, and Revel, who was downstairs, heard the commotion and rushed to the bathroom. They saw Naruto and were able to calm him down. Once he was calm, they then told him what proceeded after he fell unconscious. The white-armored male was host of the White Dragon, the Red Dragon's rival. He took Valpyr and Kokebiel's body back to the Fallen's faction for tests and interrogation, as Kokebiel left Grigori a few weeks ago. They then told him that his body was worn out and weak, so they decided to heal him as quickly as they could. As they finished explaining the events that happened, they all got dressed and headed towards school. Naruto needed to tell Rias that he had his own peerage set now and explain things about Kuroka and Revel. Naruto and the girls walked into the orc room to see Rias talking to the two church members. The other members were in the room as well. "Am I interrupting something?" Naruto asked. "Not at all, Naruto," Rias said kindly. She frowned as Naruto showed he didn't care about her friendliness. "They were just talking about joining my peerage," Rias said. "Actually, Xenovia started. We want to join Naruto's," Irina finished excitedly. Rias shouted at what she just heard from Irina and Xenovia. She was at a loss of words. She had been in a meeting with the two and they sounded as if they were going to ask to join her peerage, but only now did they reveal they wanted to be in Naruto's peerage. The only problem was he didn't have one. Speaking of Naruto, she finally noticed his appearance. "Naruto, what happened to you?" Rias questioned as she looked at the familiar markings on his body and his yellow eyes. This also caught the attention of the current occupants of the room. Akeno picking up the cups that they just drank tea from, Kiba standing in the corner of the room, and Asia sitting in the spot next to Kaneko's usual seat on the couch. "I am not really sure, just woke up like this," Naruto answered. It wasn't really a lie. He knew it had to do something with using his balance breaker before he was ready, as Hao explained, but that was as far as he knew. He needed to ask his sleeping tenants about this once they woke up. Rias stared at Naruto with a calculating eye, looking for any signs of deceit. When she saw him pondering his own answer, she knew he really had no clue what was wrong. "Okay." Rias accepted his answer. She then turned to Irina and Xenovia. "I am sure Naruto would be glad to add you to his peerage, but he doesn't have one," Rias explained. Before she could continue, Naruto spoke. "That is where you are wrong. I actually have my own set of evil pieces. In fact, I already have 2 members with me." He gestured to Kuroka, "My bishop." He then gestured to Revel, "And my queen." Those words froze the occupants in the room. Besides those who already knew, no one had expected Naruto to say that, or even for him to get his own peerage before taking part in an official raiding game. "WN?H how?" Rias stuttered out. "The meeting I had with Searsex," Naruto answered. "The Saiyans are finally grow a backbone and changing up the way the underworld runs things, specifically when it comes to promoting devils to high-class rank," Naruto explained. "They no longer care how many contracts or chores we do. They are taking in one's skill level and overall talent. The first devil to undergo this new change is me," he continued. "And probably the biggest change, and one that many of the newer generation's devils will disagree with, is this. Any devil born of the 72 pillars is no longer granted the rank of high class and a peerage without undergoing various tests similar to those of reincarnated devils for those rights," Naruto explained. Does that mean?" Rias couldn't finish her question as fear overtook her. "No. Any devil from the pillars already granted the rank of high class and a peerage will remain as they are, as it will take years to take back all the evil pieces used and possibly cause another civil war." Rias let out the breath she was holding in relief. "They don't want an incident like Riser, a high class, humiliated by me as I was a low-class devil at the time." Rias was happy at the new changes. She knew that she probably wouldn't have had her peerage. She still would have taken them in if she could. This also made it easier for reincarnated devils to get promoted without a bias for them being a half-breed or impure devil. She widened her eyes as she realized what getting a new peerage meant. Naruto saw the look of realization on her face and spoke before she did. "Yes, I have my own peerage, so that comes with new responsibilities," Naruto started. "I am still part of your peerage, so I will still be there when you need me for raiding games and such. but I must now work on building my peerage and handling my duties as a king. Rias was saddened by this. She knew that he had to uphold duties as a king, but she didn't want him to leave. Ever since her brother adopted him they were never apart for long, but now he seemed to get even more distant and it was all her own doing. She wanted to tell him to stay but knew the way to earn his forgiveness and friendship was to let him be. I understand, Rias said sadly, but where are you going to have your meetings? If you want, you can have them here, Rias said hoping he would accept. Thank you for the offer but I already have a place for my peerage, Naruto said. He then turned to walk out with Kuroka and Ravel following. He took a step before a pull on his shirt stopped him. He turned and looked at who pulled his shirt and saw it was Kaneko. She still had his shirt in her hand as she had her head down. Naruto knew what she wanted. He embraced her in a loving hug. She immediately returned it and Naruto felt her rook strength in the hug. Naruto then leaned down to her ear and whispered something that only Kuroka was able to hear. Kaneko nodded and released him while Kuroka had a loving smile on her face. She was happy her sister was able to find someone special after all she's been through. I'll see you later Kaneko, Naruto said. He then turned to Irina and Zenobia. As for your request, follow me and we can discuss this further. They nodded and followed behind his queen and bishop. As Naruto went to open the door, Issei walked through it. Sorry I am late bucko, my alarm didn't go off, Issei said before he noticed Naruto and the others in the room. Issei pointed a finger at Ravel but before Issei could shout, Naruto put a hand on his shoulder. Issei winced at the pressure Naruto was using to squeeze his shoulder. She is my queen now so don't worry about a thing, Naruto said in a dark tone. Also, if I were you I would save that energy. I mean, killing a rogue exorcist like Freed must be taxing on you. Issei looked at him dumbfounded. I didn't kill him. He got away while you were fighting that crow guy. He was the one who kicked our asses even with one arm. Naruto smirked. That was all he needed to hear. Issei had just signed his own death warrant. I'll be off. I'll leave him to you, Rias, Naruto said before he and his peerage, plus Irina and Zenobia, left the clubroom. What did he mean by that, bucko? Issei said with slight fear at the frown on Ria's face that showed she was angry. The sadistic smile that Akeno had just fueled Issei's uneasiness. He looked at Kiba and Kaneko for support only to see one eating sweets already and the other reading pretending not to notice anything. He turned to Asia and found her staring at her feet with a pondering look on her face. He turned back to Rias as she spoke. Now Issei, do you care to tell me why you lied to me? Rias questioned. What do you mean? Oh nothing major, just about how you told us that you killed the rogue exorcist Freed at the church the night we saved Asia, Rias informed him. That was when realization dawned on Issei and he knew he screwed up. It doesn't matter, what does matter is your punishment, he shivered as he heard Akeno giggle. First, you will now do some contracts from our piles. If you do not at least form one new contract a week, you will get double the amount than before, he nodded. Second, you will now be responsible for cleaning the clubroom and helping Akeno in anything she needs help with. He nodded albeit a bit fearfully as Akeno had an evil glint in her eye. And finally, no more peeping. What, you can't do that to me bucko. I need to in-ord. Enough. Rias yelled flaring her aurora shocking Asia and Issei as they weren't used to it yet. I have tolerated your behavior in the past but this is now ridiculous. Do you not realize that you were almost killed? If Naruto hadn't shown up when he did, Kokebiel would have killed us all. He was one of the leaders of Grigori for a reason. Issei put his head down. So, instead of spending your free time peeping on girls, you will be training. Alano will training you in magic while Kiba works on your physique. Issei nodded at this, and if we find you peeping again, well you won't be allowed to leave this room until the rest of the school is gone. Issei paled at what she said. He wouldn't be able to see his friends or worse, any girls at all. He quickly nodded agreeing with what Rias said. Good, now, we have an hour before school starts so you guys are free to do what you need, Rias said as she returned to her desk filing away contracts. With Naruto here it is, Naruto said to the others as they walked up to an older-looking building. This used to be the pool room for the swim team but they no longer use it as they built the newer one by the pool lockers. They looked around and saw the pool less than 100 feet away. Some of the fence surround the pool connected to the other side of the building. They then looked at the building. It was an older one-story building. It was about as old as the orc room but had dust as it hadn't been used in the last couple of years. Naruto walked to the door and pulled out a key for it. It hasn't been used in the last 5 years so it is our responsibility to clean it up, Naruto said as he opened the door. Upon opening it, dust flew around from the door not being opened in so long. When it settled down and they walked in, they were amazed at what they saw. The interior of the room was white with a tooled floor. There was a couch in the middle of the room facing the wall where you could tell a television was by the wires that dangled from the wall. Behind the couch was a kitchen area with a stove and sink in place. It also had a small bar area with cushioned stools. A gap in between the pantry and the stove indicating that was where a fridge goes.
Towards the back of the room was a pool table that was covered with a tarp. The pool cues were hanging on the wall beside it. A corner of the room had enough space for a desk for Naruto. They also noticed the room had an actual bathroom with a shower inside it. The last feature was the big glass sliding doors at the other side of the room. They were covered with drapes. When Naruto parted them, it revealed a great view of the pool. "Wow," said Ravel. "For an old dusty building, it was actually quite nice, just needed some cleaning up. It wasn't anything compared to anything the underworld had to offer, but devils did tend to make everything as perfect as they could to show off." "NYA, this place is great," Kuroka said with a grin. She loved that this was next to the pool. She could now and try to seduce Naruto in one of her bikinis. Irina and Xenovia just looked around, impressed that the school was able to afford something of this caliber. "A little cleaning in this place would look pretty good," Naruto said, already thinking of how to set up the room. He turned and looked at the pool. It was a little dirty and small traces of algae could be seen. Sona also said the pool is ours to use if we clean it till swim season starts up again. Kuroka smiled while Ravel looked nervous for some reason. "Naruto-sama, I believe you wished to talk to us," Xenovia said. Naruto turned around and saw her and Irina standing there, Irina with a cheerful smile while Xenovia had a straight face. "First, you guys are not in my peerage, so you have no need to call me Sama. Second, do not ever call me Sama. I do not deserve that title as I have not earned it. Ravel is the only one that calls me that, no matter how many times I tell her to do that. I don't need another person doing that." Ravel blushed at being thrown under the bus like that. Irina nodded while Xenovia had a straight face. "It is out of respect for my leader, Naruto-sama," Xenovia said in her emotionless tone. Naruto just sighed. "You're not going to give up, are you?" he asked her. She shook her head. "All right, call me whatever you like." Naruto threw his hands up in defeat.
"Before we talk, let's clean up first so we have a place to sit." They all nodded before they went out to grab cleaning supplies. After 15 minutes of cleaning and a little use of magic, the pool house was all clean. "Now if you would take a seat." Naruto motioned them to the stools at the bar in the kitchen. They took their seats while Naruto stood on the opposite side along with Kuroka and Ravel. "Now, why do you two wish to join my family?" Naruto asked. Irina blushed while Xenovia had a straight face. "Why would we marry you? We wish to join your peerage, unlike those two behind you," Xenovia asked. Kuroka giggled while Ravel blushed at the thought of being married to Naruto. Naruto just face-palmed. "That is not what I meant," Naruto groaned. "I do not refer Kuroka and Ravel as my servants in my peerage. They are a part of my family. I will never see or treat them as my servants." Kuroka and Ravel smiled at his words. He really did treat them like family. "So I will ask again. Why do you two wish to join my family?" Xenovia spoke first. "I have nothing left to fight for. I trained my entire life to be a warrior of God. I don't want to fight for someone who doesn't exist. I have already talked with my caretaker Griselda. She said that it is my decision and she will support me in any way." She reached behind her and pulled out a sword from who knows where. "She has decided to let me keep Durandal if you decide to turn me into a devil." Naruto nodded. He then turned to Irina for her reason. "Well, Xenovia is my best friend, so wherever she goes, I go," Irina said cheerfully. Naruto saw through it. Lying isn't the best way to convince. Irina looked shocked and was going to speak, but Naruto raised his hand for her to speak. "I can see it in your eyes, the look of hurt and betrayal. You constantly asking yourself, what was it all for?" "I've been there, Irina. I know how you feel. I can see that Xenovia is your best friend, but that isn't why you were asking to become a devil. So what is it?" Irina looked down at the countertop. "I have nothing left. I was taught that God was everything and that everything was determined by him. When we moved, I trained to be an exorcist. I was trained to fight against devils and fallen angels, to prevent their corruption of humans as a part of God's will." She looked up and had tears falling down her face. To find out that he was dead is upsetting. "But I am furious that the rest of the world has been lied to. I was a firm believer of God, as were many. I can deal with him being dead, but to lie to the world that God is watching over them is infuriating. I was taught that devils and fallen lie, cheat, and manipulate people, but I now see that heaven is no different. God truly is dead," Irina said as she cried into her hands. Xenovia placed a hand on her shoulder and offered her a small smile. "I see," Naruto said. Irina finally got a hold of herself and looked back at Naruto. "I understand how you feel, but God isn't dead." Everyone looked at him as if he grew a second head. "It's people like you that keep God alive. Now God may be the enemy of devils, but I don't care. I also don't care for peace all that much either. As long as we don't instigate anything, then we can live freely. But back to what I was saying," Naruto said.
He isn't dead as long as people believe in him and his ideals does exist in this world anymore.
No, but does his ideals and beliefs do? Yes, as long as people believe in something strong enough then he still lives in their hearts, just how he lived in yours, Naruto told them. Irina was touched at his explanation. She was angry at being lied to that she looked past why they did it, while she still didn't like being lied to, she could cut them some slack. Will you turn us into devils now Naruto-sama? Xenovia asked. It's not entirely up to me, while I don't trust you completely. Having people who strongly followed the church asking to be turned into devils is something I've never heard before, Naruto said, but it isn't up to just me. They must also make a decision. He pointed at Kuroka and Revel. As I said, we are a family. No one person makes a life-changing decision like this without the say of others unless it is under extreme circumstances. They looked over to the other woman in the room. Nya, such a big decision to make, Kuroka said. Well, you two are certainly talented with swords. That will certainly be helpful for us. Also, you two are pretty on the eyes. They smiled at the praise. The smile quickly faded however. I don't like that. You see girls. Naruto Koi is all mine. And maybe Shirone's since we need to repopulate our race after all. Kuroka went to grab Naruto but his hand up to stop her. She stopped walking forward but let one of her tails sneak around his chest. He grabbed it a bit roughly and removed it from his chest. Nya, you're so rough Naruto Koi, Kuroka sang. Naruto released her tail. Stop messing around Kuroka. I need you to make a decision. Kuroka stopped messing around at Naruto's tone. Well, they certainly are powerful. I also don't sense any deceit in the words, so I don't see why they can't join our lovely family, Kuroka stated. Naruto nodded and then looked towards Revel for her answer. Well, they are excellent swordsmen, and Xenovia keeping Durandal would be a great addition for us. They also seem very truthful in wanting to join us. I would say that they would make great additions to our family, Naruto's queen stated. Naruto turned back to the girls. Well, welcome to the Uzumaki Lucifuge family, Naruto said. Naruto then extended his arms in a grand fashion. And welcome to the manga club. Start of school Naruto was walking down the halls with Revel by his side. He had just reincarnated Irina and Xenovia into knights and had them stay at their clubroom with Kuroka. The halls were empty as the first classes of the day have already started. Naruto-sama, is this necessary? Revel asked nervously. Naruto turned to her. Of course Ojo-sama, Naruto responded. You haven't interacted with normal people because of you staying in the underworld your whole life. I want you to see what it is like to be a normal girl. If you decide to continue with school is entirely up to you. I may not like it but school is the only constant in my life that helps with all the crap that happens in my life. Revel nodded and continued walking. They reached the room they were looking for and Naruto knocked on the door. The door slid open to reveal a red-headed woman who looked to be in her mid-20s. When she saw Naruto and Revel she nodded and went back in class already being informed of a new student. From the hallway they could hear the teacher informing her class about a new student. Revel was beginning to get nervous again but relaxed when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Relax, everything is going to be fine, Naruto told her.
But what is they don't like me? Revel said. Then that is their problem. The only people that you should care about liking you is your family and we all love you, Naruto said with one of his small rare smiles. Revel blushed at his words. Plus, there is someone in this class that will look out for you. Just, don't take her teasing to heart. She doesn't mean any harm, Naruto said.
Before Revel could question who this person was, the teacher called her in. When she walked in, all eyes were glued to her. She heard multiple whispers throughout the classroom. From being called cute to beautiful, she heard someone saying she was going to be school's princess. Why don't you introduce yourself? The teacher asked. My name is Revel Phoenix. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Please be kind to me, Revel said. Thank you. Now, any questions for Ms. Phoenix? Multiple hands shot up. The teacher pointed a girl towards the front. Where did you come from? I actually didn't live that far away from here. I just moved closer to the school. Revel half lied. She technically didn't live far as she could just teleport from the underworld. There were a multitude of questions from what she liked to what her hobbies were. One question made her blush uncontrollably. Do you have a boyfriend? Came the question from a girl in the back. Revel blushed up a storm at being asked that. Why yes, and no, it's complicated, was Ravel's indecisive answer. She blushed as she remembered the contract her parents made with Sears regarding a certain blonde. The class was in an uproar. The girls were gushing at Ravel's cuteness while the guys were complaining that another girl was taken. That's enough class, the teacher said. Revel have a seat in the back over there. Revel looked where she pointed and saw an empty seat. The only thing she could see next to it was a mop of white hair behind one of the students. She walked down the aisle and took her seat. Now class, today we will be learning. Revel started to take out her school supplies. She froze when she heard the person who had the white hair speak to her. Yakitori. Ravel's eyebrow twitched as she now realized who Naruto was talking about. Manga Club Naruto sat on the couch in his clubroom. He was waiting for Ravel to get here as school had just ended.
He looked around the room at the occupants in the room. Kuroka and Irina were playing pool. By the sounds of things, Kuroka was losing by her whining and pouting. He looked towards the kitchen and saw Xenovia sitting at the bar cleaning Durandal.
The door opened, which got Naruto's attention. In walked Ravel, who looked extremely fatigued. She dragged her feet towards the couch where Naruto sat and fell face first, losing all the gracefulness that made her look like a princess. "How was your first day of school?" Naruto asked her. The rest of his family joined them on the couch, Kuroka sitting very close to Naruto, practically on his lap. Irina and Xenovia sat towards the end of the couch.
MMMPH. Ravel grunted with her face in a pillow, still laying down. "I know it was boring, but you kinda get used to it. Okay, not really, but at least you got to socialize." Naruto tried to cheer her up. HHHHMMMMM. "Really?" She went right for the grilled chicken comment when she saw you. "Didn't think she would do that on your first day," Naruto said.
The other three women were shocked that Naruto was understanding the noises that Ravel made. Naruto noticed their confusion and explained it to them.
"I lived with Kaneko for the past couple of years. She hardly says complete sentences, so noises and sounds are kinda my specialty," Naruto explained as they just nodded at that. It seemed reasonable as they all knew how Kaneko talked. MMPH. Ravel said, "Don't worry. Tomorrow is Saturday and there isn't much to do, so you can relax. We won't be working on new contracts until next week," Naruto informed them. "We are actually going to clean the pool and relax or swim tomorrow, whichever you prefer." Something that they were relieved, since Irina and Xenovia were just reincarnated today and Kuroka and Ravel were tired from the work they did in the underworld. The front door to the clubroom opened, alerting everyone. When they looked to see who it was, they saw Kaneko standing in the doorway. Kaneko herself was looking around at the occupants in the room. She saw Naruto on the couch with the rest of his peerage. She saw Ravel's head looking just above the back of the couch looking at her. She saw Kuroka sitting awfully close to Naruto. Then she saw the former exorcists on the other side of the couch. She mentally groaned at the addition of big-chested girls hanging around Naruto. "Yakitori, stop calling me that," Ravel screamed at Kaneko. Kuroka, Irina, and even Xenovia giggled at their little banter. It all stopped as they heard someone chuckling. Even Kaneko and Ravel stopped their glaring at one another to look at the person chuckling. Naruto couldn't hold in his amusement as he started chuckling at their interactions, at his family's interactions. He actually felt happy and satisfied with the way things were going. While Kaneko isn't a part of his family with his evil pieces, she was just as important, if not more, than anyone else, so to see her get along with them so well was enlightening for Naruto. The girls were shocked and blushing at Naruto laughing. They were shocked as they never once heard Naruto laugh in the time spent with him. The last time Kaneko heard him laugh was before they came to the human world for the first time, when Naruto and Malika's pranked Searzex. They also had blushes as his laugh was pleasing to their ears. It made them a little uncomfortable, and not in a bad way. If Irina and Xenovia weren't so upset with heaven, they would have called Naruto's laugh angelic. Naruto finally stopped laughing, although he had an actual smile on his face, not one of the small ones that he uses rarely. This did nothing to help the already blushing girls as their blushes darkened. "Alright then. I guess it's time to go home," Naruto said once he stopped laughing. They soon began to make their way towards his home.
"Naruto-sama." Naruto looked over at Xenovia. "Where will Irina and I be staying?" "With me, of course." Naruto swore he heard two people growling behind him. "Your family, so you are always welcome to stay with me. You two can stay with me however long you want to." "Not enough room," Kaneko said. Naruto face-palmed at his stupidity. He only had 2 rooms in his house if you didn't count his storage room downstairs. "Well, Kuroka stayed with you last night, so if you don't mind sharing again, Kaneko?" Kaneko nodded. She didn't like it because it just meant those cow-tit girls were going to be staying close to Naruto. "Great, and you 3. He pointed at Irina, Ravel, and Xenovia. "You guys can stay in my bed. I'll sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room then." "I can stay with you, Naruto-sama," stuttered Ravel. "It's fine, Ravel. You can have my bed. It will fit all 3 of you fine," Naruto assured her. "As your queen, I should be by your side at all times. It is a queen's duty to be by her king," Ravel argued. "So you're okay sleeping with me then?" Naruto said, missing the innuendo that he just said. The girls blushed heavily besides 2 glaring Neko sisters. "As long as it is just sleeping, then it will be fine," Ravel said with a cherry-red face. Naruto just shrugged as they finally reached his home. "Cozy," was what the former exorcist said before Naruto ushered them inside. Next morning, after they had reached Naruto's home, The girls each took turns in the showers. After Naruto finished his, he started on breakfast. After dinner, they all went to where they were staying for the night, 4 girls staying upstairs and him and Revel sleeping on the pull-out bed in the living room. This was where Naruto woke up. Naruto-sama, wake up, Revel yelled. Naruto didn't want to get up and promptly pulled his body pillow tighter against him. Naruto-sama, Revel whispered louder. Naruto put his face in his pillow and nuzzled into it. He breathed in a sweet smell. It smelled like strawberries. He took in a big whiff of the smell of strawberries. He moved his hand up to get more comfortable and found a spot that seemed to have more cushion. He grabbed that spot and pulled his pillow closer. The moment he heard a moan, alarms went off in his head. He opened his eyes and was met with a vision of blonde hair. He quickly realized his predicament and jumped out of bed. I am so sorry, Revel. I didn't mean to do that, Naruto quickly apologized. It's fine. A queen should always please her king, Revel said with a red face. No, they should nt. I am sorry to say, but your brother is not a king you should look up to. He is someone who abuses the peerage system to make having a harem easier, Naruto explained. Revel nodded at that. He was only interested in the peerage system to get beautiful women to sleep with him. She still loved him as he was her brother though. I forgive you, Naruto-sama. No, it can't be that easy. Please let me make it up to you, Naruto insisted. Revel thought about it for a second before she figured out what she wanted. Well, could you? School pool. Naruto and his peerage stood at the edge of the empty pool. Kaneko wasn't there due to Rias making them train more. He had opened the drain to the pool the day before as school was ending before Revel got to the clubroom. The pool wasn't too bad, some algae here and there, leaves and some other trash littered the empty pool. Naruto was wearing athletic shorts and a tank top showing off his defined muscles, his black marks and yellow eyes still present. He still hasn't heard anything from Hao or Diedrich. The girls were wearing shorts similar to the ones that runners would wear along with white t-shirts. "Nya, let's get started," Kuroka said, readying her magic. "No magic," Naruto said. They all looked at him with confused looks. "This is a team bonding exercise as much as a relaxing activity. We work together to clean the pool." They nodded and got to work. Naruto went to scrub the algae off the walls while Revel would hose off where he scrubbed to get anything he missed. Irina and Zenovia picked up the trash in and around the pool. Kuroka was cleaning the diving board and chairs. It took about an hour before everything was clean, but the time was well worth it. The pool looked as if it had just been installed the day before. They all stood by the edge admiring their work. "Well, Kuroka, if you would do the honors," Naruto said, breaking the silence. "With pleasure," Kuroka said. She gathered up magic and put her arms in front of her. A ceiling matrix appeared above the pool and gallons of water came spilling out. A couple of minutes later and the pool was filled with clear, sparkling water. "Alright then, you guys can go change into something you like and are free to use the pool however you like. Yes, you have to wear at least a swimsuit, Kuroka." Naruto sighed at the last bit he said when Kuroka raised her hand. With that said, they went to the locker rooms and got changed. Naruto was the first back and wore dark blue swim trunks with an orange lining. He was moving some of the chairs together just in case the girls wanted to lay down and relax or tan. Naruto stopped what he was doing as he heard footsteps. He turned and saw a sight that would have hospitalized the perverted trio. Revel was wearing the most modest swimsuit of the 4. It was a pink 2-piece swimsuit with white polka dots on it. It showed off her breasts well but still kept her modest look. It also let him see her more curvaceous figure that her regular attire didn't. Irina was wearing a white 2-piece swimsuit. It was a normal swimsuit except for the fact that her breasts made it seem as if it was about to rip. Zenovia was wearing something he would have never guessed. She was wearing a green 2-piece with gold straps, same as Kanon. Kuroka was wearing the most obscene swimsuit however. She was wearing a gold 2-piece. The top only had small triangles to cover Kuroka's areolas, leaving little to the imagination. Her bottom was also gold but only covered her front just enough to show that she waxed. It was held by the thinnest strings around her waist. The back hardly covered her plump rear. "Nya, see something you like, Naruto-koi?" Kuroka said seductively. The others blushed as Naruto eyed them. "You girls look beautiful. Any guy would be lucky to have any of you," Naruto said honestly. Kuroka lost her playfulness at his words and blushed along with the others. "I forgot something," Revel said as she ran back to the locker rooms. "Okay then. Well, enjoy the pool, girls," Naruto said. "Yahoo!" Irina exclaimed as she ran on the diving board and jumped in the pool. Kuroka and Zenovia went to the chairs that Naruto had moved closer to where they were at. Naruto was about to jump in until Kuroka called him over. "Would you mind rubbing some tanning lotion on my back, Naruto-koi?" Kuroka seductively said. Naruto rolled his eyes at her but complied nonetheless. Kuroka laid on her stomach and undid her top straps. "Make sure to rub it in really good." Naruto ignored her as he put some tanning lotion on his hands and kneeled behind her. NYA. Kuroka yelped as the cold lotion along with Naruto's strong hands made contact with her skin. Naruto began to rub the lotion along her back. He was actually enjoying the way her soft and supple skin felt against his hands. Naruto-sama, can we begin now? Naruto turned to Revel. When he turned, he saw she had arm floaties and an inflatable duck around her waist. He was a bit taken back at what he saw. What's with the floaties? Naruto questioned. The others wanted to know also. Well, I didn't want to drown and I read that these help. It's fine, but you don't need them, I have this. Naruto pulled out a small board that lifeguards carried. This will help you until you get the hang of it. With that, Naruto got up and jumped into the pool, much to Kuroka's disappointment. Revel took off her floaties and neared the edge of the pool. She couldn't jump into the water, even with Naruto there to catch her. Her being a phoenix and being part of a clan of fire was a big issue when it came to water. Sure, getting wet or drinking water wasn't an issue, but she has never been in a pool before, hence why she asked Naruto to teach her how to swim in return for the interesting morning they had. Jump in, Revel, I'll catch you, Naruto told her. She hesitated for a moment before she jumped in. She started to panic until she felt Naruto's arms around her. See, that wasn't so bad, was it? She shook her head. Great, now grab onto this. He moved to the board in front of her. She grabbed it and Naruto started to pull her. Kick your feet, Revel, Naruto said as they went back and forth in the pool. Irina joined them and ended up helping Naruto teach Revel. So, what do you think of Naruto? Kuroka asked the blue-haired girl next to her. He is a strong man, definitely smart, also he is compassionate to those who he sees as family, Xenovia said. Kuroka agreed with her but turned sour when Xenovia continued. He will be an excellent father for my powerful children, Xenovia said. Is that why you joined his peerage? Kuroka asked dangerously. Isn't that why you joined his? Xenovia shot back. It's complicated, Kuroka said. He asked me to join in order to keep me close to Sharon, my sister. When he first asked, I thought he was just looking for powerful peerage members or starting a harem, but he did it for my sister. He had no evil intentions in mind, and him taking me in cleared my crimes with the Satans, so I fell for him after spending all this time with him, Kuroka explained. I see, Xenovia said. I haven't spent much time with him but can tell he is a loving individual. I can't say I love him now because I don't, but I can come to love him. Plus, him being as powerful as he is, he will bring me great children, Xenovia said. To answer your question, I did not join to have his children, although that would be great. I joined because he is a strong fighter and seems to be upfront and truthful about everything. We heard how Rias got Issei and Asia in her peerage. Irina and I would not like to be a part of that even if we are devils now. Kuroka agreed. She thought she just wanted to use Naruto and protect him. She wasn't jealous, not at all. I also believe Irina may be falling for him. Kuroka turned towards where Xenovia was looking. She saw Irina and Revel laughing as Naruto was being drowned because they jumped on his back. She may not love him now, but when she saw how Issei was, she became depressed. She truly cared for him, but when she saw how lecherous he became, it broke her heart. She wouldn't talk when we alone and put up a fake smile when we around others, Xenovia explained. That smile she has right now is the first genuine smile I've seen since we first met Rias and everyone. Kuroka nodded at that. Naruto just had that effect on people. Kuroka then got up and grabbed Xenovia bridal style. What are you doing? This, Kuroka said as she tossed Xenovia in the pool. The splash alerting the three who were already in there. They all saw Kuroka laughing as Xenovia surfaced from the water. Irina and Revel joined Kuroka in her laughing as Xenovia gave in and started giggling. None ever saw Naruto leave the pool. Kuroka was so caught up in laughing that never noticed Naruto sneak up behind her. She finally noticed when Naruto broke out into a run and wrapped his arms around her as he jumped in the pool. NYA. It's so cold, Kuroka yelled. Naruto just laughed like he did yesterday with all the girls joining. Kuroka got over her shock and started splashing him as she laughed. Naruto splashed back as did the others. Naruto looked around and felt warm. This was his family. He had a family again. The only thing that would make this moment better was if his mother and Kaneko were here with them. The manga club never noticed someone watching them. That could have been us, said the person watching. The person had red hair and teal eyes. She had a figure to die for. She had a lone tear fall down her face. I really screwed up, didn't I? Naruto-kun. The girl then walked back to the orc to see how her peerage was doing. Thanks for watching.